Sort of coming Chapter 9:15. Yang Ning's face was flushed with his neck tightened, and he had to slap the arm of the man behind him vigorously, hoping that the other side would be merciful. They are all friends who don't know, so why bother? The white-clothed boy seemed to be very angry. Instead of letting go of his arms, he fell into a tan, moved a little and pulled Mu Mao's body backwards, his back almost flat on the ground. Yang Ning was really dizzy and said with difficulty, "Brother good guy, take care of it, hurry up and take care of it, don't save yourself, your student is born with supernatural powers and shots too hard." I only saw a guy with a young face with a red mole on the eyebrows and a murderous face. The white-clothed boy turned his head and looked at Xing Dafeng, bent his knees and squatted slightly, first twisted one of his hands severely, causing Yang Ning to roll his eyes straight. Did not care about life and death, just smiled brightly. "Brother Dafeng." Xing Dafeng smiled and said, "I haven't seen him for many years. Brother Cui is still a beautiful young man." As far as friendship is concerned, Xing Dafeng naturally has a better relationship with the old cook and Wei Shanjun. The three of them are more jealous of this big white goose and can only say that they are not alienated or close. Xing Dafeng asked, "Why are you here?" Cui Dongshan grinned. "Shanren had a clever plan." Qin Pingon reminded, "Dongshan, it's almost there. If this continues, Brother Mu Mao will pretend to be dead and he will come back to me for a sum of medicine." Cui Dongshan let go of his arms and raised Brother Mu Mao. The latter rubbed his neck with one hand and coughed. Cui Dongshan helped beat his back and said with a smile, "Blame me, I am so enthusiastic. It is really for Brother Mu Mao. I've been fascinated for a long time. I can't help myself without meeting. Brother Mu Mao won't hold grudges?" Yang Ning smiled awkwardly. No. In the eyes of the air trainer and the ordinary master, they are two completely different worlds. Once the air trainer starts climbing, he will see a whole new world. Suddenly, like opening the eyes of the sky, the people around you are slender, eyelashes trembling, and the needles of the clothes will be as large as the mesh of a fishnet. The trembling amplitude of the crow's feet when women speak is clearly visible, and the gaps in the powder on their faces are like crisscrossing of the ridge. The sound of footsteps nearby, even every breath, heartbeat falling in the ears of the monk will sound like thunder. So every Qi practitioner at the beginning of his practice needs to adapt to this tremendous change. In addition, all magic powers as well as sword repair flying swords more or less will involve some Qi ripples. A cultivator facing this clue is like an ordinary master sitting by the water with others throwing rocks into the water. The splashes and rippling water patterns that are aroused are the spiritual ripples between the heavens and the earth. So someone approached the wine table unconsciously, and this Yang Ning was surprised that she would be attacked by others, strangling her neck and having no strength to fight back. It was even more shocked. This is a colorful world with one of the few monks in the upper 5 realms, and it is not Beijuluja where the big wild dragons and snakes dormant everywhere. I want this nascent soul realm to have eggs. A wine table, Qin Pingon, Xing Dafeng, Cui Dongshan, Yang Ningxing, just one person and one bench, but Cui Dongshan squeezed a stool with the Mu Mao brother, bumped his shoulder and said with a hippie smile, "Brother Mu Mao, little brother, I know a little bit about physiognomy. I can see that your luck is so good. It's a good season of fortune and numerology. When you get here you will definitely have a big harvest. It is better for our brothers to meet frankly, set up a stall and come to the scene." "The burden of bartering?" Yang Ning said with a face, ashamed to say. Cui Dongshan lifted his feet, twisted his figure, stood up again and quickly strangled Brother Mu Mao's neck again with lightning speed. Yang Ningxing immediately said, "I'm not so ashamed. In fact, there are little gains. How can Bao Zhai do it?" Fucking as expected of the students brought out by the good guys, they are almost out of the blue and better than the blues. If they turn their faces, they turn their faces faster than turning the books. Back then the good guys didn't talk about justice like this in the Ghost Valley. Qin Pingon ignored Cui Dongshan's absurd behavior, just picked up the wine bowl, bumped with Xing Dafeng and drank each as if it was the lively and current wine and food. The wicked have their own grievances. This is called bittern tofu, one thing drops one thing. Cui Dongshan sat back to his original position. "Don't worry about setting up a stall, first drink the drinks in place." Doesn't like to talk about his journey and occasionally mentions some landscape stories, often in a few sentences, but this Brother Mu Mao, Mr. really said a few more words. And talking about the scholar in black, the husband smiled a lot when he spoke. In the early years in Luzhou Beiju, Qin Pingon had reunited with Jiang Shangzhen. The latter revealed the secret. The Yunshao Palace Yang Ningxing, known as the Little Heavenly Monarch, is a well-deserved natural Dao kind, and he will do that extremely dangerous cut. The three-corpse move intends to condense the evil thoughts in the heart into a mustard seed and then cut it out. In this way, when Yang Ningxing breaks the bottleneck in the future, he will become a jade from Yuaning. During the period the heart demon is in trouble, obstacles will be much smaller. The act of slashing the three corpses is a unique way of the Taoist school. Buddhism also has the same way of subduing the heart and the horse. It happened that Qin Pingon had seen these two things with his own eyes. In addition to Yang Ningxing, he also encountered a white-clothed monk who cut a cliff as a cave dojo. He had been with a heart ape all year round. As for the scholar in black who said that he and Qin Pingon were fighting side by side, sharing the accounts to earn money, it is really not a lie. The two sides fought all the way in the Ghost Valley, tricked each other, calculated each other, and finally got their own gains, but said that Yang Ningxing got the old dragon's cave. That very valuable golden scorpion fish, and the term very valuable, was an evaluation that came out of Jiang Shangzhen's mouth. The things that Jiang Shangzhen thinks are valuable, shouldn't they be worthy of the name? So this account Qin Pingon, after many years, has always remembered very clearly. It turned out that after a hard work he still made a small profit. Brother Mu Mao secretly made a big head? Yang Ningxing saw the white-clothed boy surnamed Cui, took out a folding fan of yuzu from his sleeve, twisted his fingers, opened it with a snap and convinced people with virtue. Dare to meet someone in the same way? Brother Mu Mao, brother, I have a unique secret technique that can help you out of Yang Ning's control. Otherwise it seems to be free and easy, but in the end, it is still unavoidable to make wedding clothes for others and practice hardship, and the result is a dish on the table. Why bother? Cui Dongshan has a sincere expression on his face and said with a serious and earnest voice, "Why don't we make a big deal with our brothers? This kind of burden is the only one in the world. Please cherish it, there will be no such shop after passing this village." Yang Ningxing smiled and shook his head and said, "Brother Cui, why bother me? Even if a great sword immortal like Bai Chong cuts the red line of marriage, he also cuts the line of cause and effect drawn by the avenue." Cui Dongshan shook the folding fan vigorously, sneered and said, "There is a specialization in the art industry, so Bai Chong is a green onion." Yang Mu Mao turned his head to look at Qin Pingon, wondering, "Brother good man, this Master Cui is really your student, not the preaching teacher who led you up the mountain?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "It's a student." Cui Dongshan twisted the turning fan and changed his side to face Yang Ningxing, refusing to accept beating to death. Yang Ningxing caught a glimpse of the four characters above. One body leaned back and his face was full of horror. He hurriedly clasped his fists and said, "It's no wonder that I fell in love with Dao Yu Cui at first sight. I had only a few words, so I expressed my heart." Yang Mu Mao's foundation. The way of being in the world is all in the 8 characters on both sides of friends Cui Dao Yu. Cui Dongshan took out a small celadone dish from his sleeve, then raised his sleeve and shook it. Some peach slices fell out and looked at Mr. Qin Pingon shook his head. Cui Dongshan twisted a piece of candied fruit into his mouth, and then pushed the porcelain plate to Jing Dafeng and said vaguely, "Brother Dafeng, quickly taste it, it's very rare delicacy, it will be hard to eat in the future." Jing Dafeng is not polite. He grabbed the candied fruit and put it into his mouth. After chewing it, he immediately chewed out the doorway and said, "Good craftsmanship." Qin Pingon picked up the porcelain plate and handed it to Yang Ningxing. The latter carefully twisted a piece of candied fruit with and looked at it as if it were made of dried peaches. Qin Pingon put the porcelain plate back in front of Jing Dafeng. Asked, "Brother Mu Mao, what are your plans next?" Yang Ning chewed slowly, suddenly looking radiant. It turned out that his soul and 2 souls were like a long drought in the rain, and benefited a lot, just like swallowing a panacea that was refined, and the corner of his eye looked at that one. Porcelain plate, there are 3 pieces of candied fruit, he said. Continue to wander. Since it is from the south, I plan to go to the north to see if I can meet a brilliant Mingjun. Please be me national teacher or something. Next time the good guy passes by, I will be the host and must be hospitality. Qin Pingon nodded. Yang Ning asked instinctively, "Brother good guy, I finished the stall with Dao Yu Cui, but I really left." Qin Pingon still only nodded. When Yang Ningxing saw that the good guy didn't get in, he had to bite the bullet and asked, "I'm really not invited to the summer palace. Maybe I'm a passionate person and I stayed behind." It's not a sword repairman, it's always okay to be a guest clerk. It's also good for Fei Xingcheng and the line of hidden officials to do my best. Qin Pingon took a sip of the wine and smiled and said, the summer palace is small where there is room for the incomparable Mu Mao brother, and the twisted melon is not sweet. I think there is no need to keep it. Not sweet? Why is it not sweet like candied fruit on the table if you can eat it 2 or 3 times a year? The bitter melon that breaks hard can be sweet as honey. Besides, the good guy doesn't understand me. Go outside. I'm the most able to endure hardships. I don't have to pay any salary when I become a guest of the summer palace. Yang Ningxing forcibly swallowed the candied fruit that was quickly chewed in his mouth, quietly circulated the aura of Zhou Xian, and dragged it to several natal qi residences to store, and then reached out to the porcelain plate wanting to have another piece. As a result, Cui Dongshan closed the folding fan and knocked on the back of his hand hard, causing Yang Ning to end in angrily. Why should brother Mu Mao stay close and seek further distance? Don't want a cheap ready-made one. How can you be a bag fast? Cui Dongshan shook the breeze and smiled and said, if I didn't guess wrong, you have been to the north, you have been a real person protecting the country, you have your own territory, and you have a puppet emperor. When everything is ready, you only owe Dongfeng. Go to the Yashang Yaoqing or one of the direct disciples of the national teacher Bai O, so that you can get what you need from the Qingshan dynasty in the Qingming world, and quietly negotiate a business? You are protecting yourself. The Qingshan dynasty can to get a large enclave in many immortal mansions of the tribe. I believe brother Mu Mao's current fortune, the hope is still great. Yang Ning's expression astringent, silent. Cui Dongshan took advantage of the hot railroad. But before the door opens next time, there is still a young man, Mu Mao brother's Yuanying realm, traveling all the way seemingly peaceful. But since I will meet me today, I will meet tomorrow. Since it is a great thing to meet me, whoever meets me next time, logically speaking, it will be suspended. I declare in advance that this is not my cursed brother Mu Mao. Qin Pinyin is confounded by Cui Dongshan. Cui Dongshan repeatedly said that the black-clothed scholar had good luck, which is actually the truth. If the luck was a little bit worse, as one of the 3 corpses killed by Yang Ningxing, it should have disappeared long ago. This is also when Qin Pingon and the scholar in black were parting, why there was a feeling of sadness that the 2 sides have this parting and never meet again. Yang Ning smiled and looked at Qin Pingon. My dear brother, I still believe in you more. Why don't you tell me the truth? This fellow Cui Daoist really has the best of both worlds. Qin Pingon nodded and said, yes, but it's still not a once-and-for-all method, but it is guaranteed that brother Mu Mao can increase his age for hundreds of years out of thin air without looking for the Yao Yaxiang. Whether you can get along with Yang Ning, whether you can enter the Jade Realm or even become an immortal, and whether you can find the way to break the knot in the future depends on brother Mu Mao's own chance and luck. Yang Ningxing seemed to have taken a reassurance pill, stroked his palm and exclaimed, sure enough, it's still a good guy who trades fair and it's childlike. Don't say anything else. This good guy has a lot of defensiveness, and he has no intention of taking the initiative to harm others. This is not what a good person is. The reason why this brother Mu Mao, who has Yang Ning's nature and one soul, came to the Wuxia world to experience, is actually Yang Ning's unexpectedness and chose a more lofty avenue. Treasure hunting, missing things, practicing to break the realm, are all blindfolds. You have to get in touch with Yao Qing, the first assistant of the Qingshan dynasty. When the door is reopened, you will go to the Qingming world and meet the Taoist master. Yaxiang Yao Qing is the real pursuit of great future. This matter is the decree of the true body Yang Ningxing. As one of the 3 corpses, brother Mu Mao, he must not be disobeyed. Moreover, this action is also a kind of self-help of the scholar in black. Because once the plan fails, Yang Ningxing can only take a step back, recovering, refining and fusing the Yang Mu Mao, who is one of the 3 corpses, and reintegrating into a complete Yang Ningxing. Once the black-clothed scholar and Yao Qing fail to agree and return without success, Yang Ning has his own means and there is no more brother Mu Mao in the world. Qin Pingon suddenly asked, is the true Yang Ningxing has entered the Wuxia world through Tongyi's Hao a long time ago, and secretly went to the Qingming world? The black-clothed scholar looked sad, raised the wine bowl and took a big sip, wiped the corners of his mouth with the back of his hand. His eyes were dark and unclear, staring at the light ripples in the bowl on the table. Obviously, my only way out was long ago. The guy is blocked. With Yang Ning's temperament, how can he let me leave it alone and rely on me, the bad embryo he least looks at, to take refuge in Baiyujing? Unsurprisingly, he is already in the 5 cities of Baiyujing. Somewhere on the second floor I started practicing Taoism. He raised his head and smiled, holding the white bowl with his palm and shaking it gently. No matter how good the drink is, it will only be in one bowl. But there is nothing to regret, it is a good drink after all. Cui Dongshan sighed and said, Yao Qing is feasible but Yang Ming's nature may not be feasible. In terms of qualifications, roots and blessings, the little Tianjun of Luzhou in Beiju is still a lot less favorable than Yao Qing's blessedness. Of course, if Brother Mu Mao thinks I'm being alarmist, I can't stop him. The method of proving the Tao by slashing the three corpses is both mysterious and dangerous, and not everyone can do it. In history, many Taoists who have walked this path have fallen short of their achievements and suffered many future problems. Even if it succeeds, of course it is of great benefit to the Taoist himself, but for the three corpses, it is often a kind of death and disappearance, and the end is like the life thing that has been tempered, returning to the soul, and life is short. Such as the autumn of vegetation. However, there are few exceptions in the history of Taoism. For example, Qingming Xianxia in the Xianxia dynasty, where a large group of 5 tomb youths emerged. The first assistant Yao Qing, the Taoist named Shouling, this Dao sect Gaozhen who is often invited to give lectures and preach in by Yujing Jade Imperial City, made a feat. Yao Qing not only killed the 3 corpses, but also produced 3 more zombies out of thin air, all of whom were immortal. One person with 3 Dharmakayas practiced together, the avenues are related and the well water does not offend the river. Yao Qing is outside the body of the yin and the yang god, which is equivalent to an extra friend of the avenue, of 2 immortals and 2 jade. The 3 monks who came out of the 3 corpses are similar to ghosts but not the same. Yao Qing himself, as the deity, is also a monk at the peak of the Ascension realm. Qin Pingon asked, Yang Mingzhen, your brother, intends to reach the top of the mountain in Wuxia world, and then go to Bai O, hoping to let her help to feed the boxing? Yang Ning shook his head and smiled. This is not clear. My brother's thoughts are always wild and unpredictable, making it difficult for outsiders to guess. Bai O, the national teacher of the Xianxia dynasty, is a woman pure martial artist, with a hand halberd iron chamber on her waist. She is the 3rd person in the martial arts of the Qingming world, and she is undoubtedly the ultimate of the first floor. Yang Ningxing seems to have finally made up his mind. This deal is done. Even if there is still a bit of a lot of ties, it is better than a puppet. In this way I am free and he is also relaxed. Yang Ningxing is even more able to practice avenues in by Yujing. For me, Yang Mu is more than his Yang Ning's nature. In the long run it will be a good thing after all. Xiao Mo stayed in the shop and looked carefully at the innocent signs on the wall. Cui Dongshan beckoned vigorously, Xiaomo, come on. Xiao Mo walked out of the shop quickly and asked with a smile, What's wrong with Mr. Cui? Cui Dongshan asked with a smile, Xiaomo, can you see that line of cause and effect with distinct primary and secondary? Xiao Mo glanced at the scholar in black and nodded. It can be seen that this long line of cause and effect of Zijin Daoqi has spread to the sky, and with someone else in the world, it formed the scene that Taoist priests call it a line of sky in the early years. Generally speaking, Xiaomo never actively explores the heartstrings of others, nor does he care about the other's realm or his or her origin, because it is unnecessary. In ancient times, many gods who fell to the world due to various reasons, if the punishment was not too severe, the old heaven would allow that to walk the world with the body of sin. This is the beginning of a part of the world's immortals and their re-entry. The sky hangs down a long line pulling the earth. This is the so-called skynet that is full of negligence and not leaking. The small fish swim freely among them, cultivated Taoism and become the big fish of the climate, and it is difficult to break free from the restraint until death. Later that little master's unparalleled knowledge was largely due to this matter. The saint separates heaven and earth with his own avenue, and the price of this saint is not to be among the 15 realms. It's not that it can't be done, it's that it's unwilling. In the ancient times, because of these phenomena of heaven and earth, a small group of Taoists who were blessed to the soul accidentally discovered some circular and orderly circulation of Taoism, and later generations gradually evolved many channels. For example, among them there are hopeful champions. Cui Dongshan asked, Can you cut it open? Xiao Mo nodded and said, Now it's okay to no matter what's going on, it's okay to completely cut off this long line. Not to mention that I haven't done this kind of thing before and I promise to be unscathed. If this fellow Yang be cruel in exchange for a free body at the price of falling a few times, I can help to cut out the small half-grain of Taoism from his heart, and then keep the thing and one day return the old master. It is a sum of money that has been cleared, or else be cruel. Let me help smash Dao seeds with a sword and ruin that person's future, no problem. Qin Pingon smiled and said, Brother Mu Mao, what do you say? The scholar in black rubbed his hands and smiled. Just disconnect the line of cause and effect temporarily. The old saying goes well, and you can stay on the sidelines so that you can meet in the future. Qin Pingon nodded and said, It makes sense. So our brother Mu Mao began to hold his breath and was ready to prepare himself for the collapse of a small world of human body, mountains and rivers and so on. Several of Yang Ning's destiny left to him have already been set up in various large mansions. Wait, gather the moral energy from all over the place, like soldiers and horses gathered, one after another, to rush to a crucial Jiangyi important place, and be prepared to stay in line so as not to accidentally fall down and hurt the roots of the road. As a result, the guy who was called Xiao Mo by friends of Cui Daoist just walked up to him on the top of his head, opened his 5 fingers, twisted his wrists as if to pull gently, and finished work. The scholar in black still waited patiently for a while, seeing that Xiao Mo was already sitting on the empty stool, and then he was confused and tentatively said, Is this done? This young monk in the yellow hat and blue shirt, when he is a sword repairman in the Ascension realm. You good guy. Can you repeat the same trick, join hands in the game and partner to cheat me? Qin Pingon smiled and said, Why don't you take a good look at the weather in your own world, especially if you look closely at the movement of the small half-grain Taoist species. Whether it's true or not, it's clear at a glance. Cui Dongshan hurriedly came to behind Xiaomo, raised his elbow and rubbed his shoulders for Mr. Xiaomo. Tough, too hard this shot, the loss is immeasurable. Xiaomo wanted to say that it's not hard work, it's just a small effort, but it's harder to resist mentioning it. After a while, the scholar in black showed no more joking expression, his face was solemn, and asked Qin Pingon, How to repay? Qin Pingon smiled and said, I will pass by somewhere in the future. Master Yang remembers to do his best to be a landlord. The scholar in black raised a hand, spread out his palm and promised, Before opening the door again, if I really become the protector of a new dynasty, I can change the method and give it to the 500,000 people in Feixiangcheng. Cui Dongshan looked at Mr. and asked with his eyes, Is this transaction at a loss? If he didn't make any money, the students would go on his own initiative and wander around with this brother Mu Mao. Qin Pingon nodded, indicating that there was a profit, and turned back to the burden of the two of you. The black-clothed scholar was relieved, as if a huge boulder on Dao Xian was removed. Dao Xian was a little clear at this moment, and he vaguely felt an opportunity to break the ground, such as the peeling off of bamboo shoots and revealing the embryonic form of a wild green bamboo. Suppressing his surprise, his expression was complicated and said, From today onwards I am Yang Mu Mao, worthy of the name. Sure enough, every time you meet a good man there must be something good. At the moment there are outsiders present, otherwise you will have to hang your shoulders with him and say from the bottom of your heart, The good man is really my blessed general. Qin Pingon raised the wine bowl and said, Brother Mu Mao, I'm taking the initiative to take care of things this time, so next time we meet again, don't let me do the wrong thing to make up for it. Yang Mu Mao laughed and said, How can we not spare any good fortune? Zheng Dafeng smiled and gathered the bowls, Then everyone in the room will drink 10. Qin Pingon drank a bowl of wine and asked, Have you come to Feixiangcheng from the heat of Sichuan? Yang Mu Mao shook his head and said, No. Otherwise it's his ostentation. It has long been known to passers-by. Shu Heatstroke is very different from our two brothers. The sons of wealthy families are both delicate and noble, going out and paying attention to thieves. Moreover, this guy is a tired, lazy person. He doesn't like to move. He has a good life. He is more popular than others. He drank with me one night and said that he was going to be in the Jade State. When the next day he really gave him whatever he wanted. As soon as he entered the Yupu realm, Yang Mu Mao couldn't even be sure whether Shu Heatstroke was accumulated or on a whim. In fact, the monks on the mountains in the world know well whether it is the 10 young people in the world or the 10 candidates who are slightly inferior. As long as they are on the list, they are all expected to exist. As long as you are on the path of spiritual practice, don't be too arrogant and overwhelmed, and you won't encounter big accidents. It can be called a flight candidate for sure. Like Ning Yao Fei Ran, now he is in the Ascendant Realm and he is still a sword repairman. A first person in the colorful world, a savage co-owner. If it is a pure wufu, there is hope that it will reach the end of the real world, and even have the opportunity to fight for the legendary god arrives, of with this fist I am the god. Qin Pingon casually said, how does he feel about Fei Xingcheng? Yang Mumao said without hesitation, very good, so good that it can't be better. The reason why the heat of the Shu came to the colorful world at the beginning was to blame his parents for not allowing him to travel to the Great Wall of Jianqi. And where did Shunan Yuanyuan let it go? Therefore I have never been to the Great Wall of Jianqi. I was cited as the biggest regret in my life by the heat stroke in Shu. The master of Shu Dong was extremely guilty about this, so he kept the only son down the mountain in secret. Qin Pingon was puzzled. Is it a sword repairer? Yang Mumao nodded and said, it is indeed a sword repairer. Because Shu Heatstroke has already been on the border of transcendent Taiwan, handing swords with a group of banned monks, and they have not been killed, so there is no taboo about Shu Heatstroke as a sword repair. In addition, Shu has 2 natal flying swords, 1 dog. Once it is sacrificed, the sun will be scorching, the earth will be roasted, and within 100 miles the aura is fumigated, and the Huang Maishan is just like the natal magical power. On the contrary, the heavy rain is majestic, the world is gloomy, and the rain is extremely evil. The air trainer is in it, like being trapped in the ruins of an ancient battlefield in the wind, and wind is just the rank of the 2 flying swords, and it can't be called a small world for the time being. Qin Pingon glanced at Xiao Imo. Xiao Imo nodded, it was true. Qin Pingon continued to ask, could you tell me something about the heat stroke in Shu, and Kairantai would like to conclude an alliance with Fei Xingcheng? Yang Mumao thought for a while, this is more difficult to say. The Shu heatstroke guy is too lazy. Even if he has a good impression of Fei Xingcheng, he may not be willing to engage in some covenants. Xu Zhongshu has a habit when he was young. As long as he takes the initiative to do things, he will pursue a certain kind of extreme, so he is not lazy at all. If he really becomes an ally with Ascension City, he might take the initiative to ask to serve as an offering here. If the chief offering is not made, he should step back and get a second place. It is estimated that you criminal officer Yingguangqun Mansion 3 channels, within a year, everyone will be annoyed by him. Extreme. Qin Pingon was puzzled. For an analogy? Yang Mumao said, for example, recite Taoism. Qin Pingon was surprised. All? Yang Mumao nodded and said, all. Qin Pingon is like listening to a heavenly book, and he doubts. 3 holes for supplements and 12 categories with a total of more than 1,200 volumes. Although there are many editions, the fewest ones should be tens of millions of words, right? Yang Mumao nodded and said, yes, he also specially selected the Daozong version with the most words. Although he has never forgotten since he was a child, he can read 10 lines at a glance. But the mother of Shu Heatstroke almost didn't feel distressed back then. Shu Heatstroke is indeed a bit of a headache. After all, he had just started to practice at that time, and his realm was not high, and he was only a cultivator of the lower 5 realms. So Shu Nanyu made an exception and assumed the posture of being a father, and he was not allowed to endorse it, otherwise. I went to the ancestral hall to shop on the floor. Shu Heatstroke turned to practice for half a year, and soon entered the middle 5 realm before continuing to endorse. In the end he remembered all of it. Now he can recite it backwards, not bad at all. Cui Dongshan was surprised. There is a future. Zheng Dafeng rubbed his chin, sighing, the young people nowadays are more lively and vigorous than the other. Qin Pingon smiled knowingly. Understood. Shu Heatstroke is still a person with obsessive-compulsive disorder, a bit similar to Lu Mao of Huanghuaguan. Yang Mumao showed a rather enviable look. It is said that the Fulu Yuxian once passed by Luxiazu and rested in Tianyu Cave. He saw the young Shu Heatstroke who had just begun to endorse, and he became a lover of talent. It's just that the mother of Shu Heatstroke was reluctant to let her son be a Taoist priest. In the eyes of the woman, Yu Xian's intention at the time was only to collect Shu Heatstroke as a descendant, not the close disciple. After all, Shu Heatstroke, he is the only child, and he will definitely inherit Tianyu Cave in the future, so the matter of apprenticeship failed. Being able to become Yu Xian's direct descendant, even if it is not a close disciple, this kind of good fortune is indeed enviable and not enviable. Yang Mumao chuckled and said, what's more, the reason why Shu Heatstroke didn't come to Feishing City was because this guy had some messy quirks and particularities. He said that there was a summer residence for hidden officials in Feishing City, and he didn't quite deal with his name. Therefore it is not suitable to visit here. Qin Pingon waved his hand. Your baggage fast, I don't mix and I don't have any money. Cui Dongshan took Yang Mu Mao Pai Dian to the shop, and the two of them squatted behind the counter and began to barter. Less than half of the incense kung fu, the two of them left the shop and returned to the wine table. One wanted to pour each other and the other said that I came to me and love each other more than brothers. Yang Mu Mao Yuma drank a jar of wine, just slightly drunk, got up and left and then traveled north. Since there is no need to find the Yaxiang Yaoqin, he settled in the north with peace of mind. Qin Pingon took the lead in walking the streets and alleys, and sent Yang Mu Mao to the north of the city. Cui Dongshan and Xiao Imo followed behind. Because they were walking, they were acquaintances with the second shopkeeper. They kept greeting each other. During the period, Qin Pingon would stop and chat. Sentence. Yang Mu Mao called the chief inspector. Send you 1,000 miles away, you must say goodbye. The good guy can stop. Qin Pingon stopped, hugged fists and said with a smile, treasure everything. From the beginning to the end, Yang Mu Mao didn't ask about the identity of Xiao Imo. He just came and called Xiao Imo alone. He solemnly said, Great grace does not say thank you, the younger generation will remember it in my heart. The mountains are high and the rivers are long. The opportunity to repay Mr. Xiao Imo, Qin Pingon explained on behalf of him. Brother Mu Mao's meaning is that he has some thighs. How about one hug? Yang Mu Mao is also a scumbag, does not deny the matter and smiles heartily. The one who knows me best is also the good man. Xiao Imo smiled and said, Since Dao Yuyang is my son's friend, he is Xiao Mo's friend. If you are lucky enough to see you again in the future, no matter where you are, Dao Yuyang needs help. If you have something to say, you don't need to be polite. The heartstrings of this black-clothed student are quite interesting. He reunited with his son after a long absence and he really meant to be close to him, but he deliberately didn't say anything. And his son seems to have a somewhat inexplicable look at this person. Probably this is the so-called sympathy. Back then, in the whole world, there were only a handful of fellow Taoists who could make Xiaomo feel this way. The Bixiadong cave master by the Luobao beach was one of them. All words are cumbersome. Just looking at each other and smiling is not against your heart. Yang Mu Mao stared at the young sword repairer in the yellow hat and blue shoes, and couldn't help asking, Dare to ask the senior realm? Xiao Imo treats it frankly, it's not the 14th realm. Beyond the 14th realm, the realm of oneself depends on the realm of the person being asked about the sword. Cui Dongshan is overwhelmed with joy. Yang Mu Mao knew it in his heart. At least he was a sword repairman in the fairy realm. It is very likely that he was really a hidden sword repairman in the ascending realm. Could it be that the elder sword Immortal left the guardian of the last hidden official? Is it the criminal officer who hasn't appeared in the Great Wall of Jianqi for many years? Or a more hidden priest? Forget it. Thinking about what happened, Yang Mu Mao curbed his thoughts and said with emotion, This time I didn't go in vain. First I met my old friend in a foreign country and I met two new friends. I taught people refreshed. Qin Pingon said heartily, The feeling of I'm not me is uncomfortable. So you don't really need to think about my help today. Yang Mu Mao asked cautiously, Is the good guy reminding me to don't think too much or don't think about it? Qin Pingon smiled and said, Is that a pun for me? Yang Mu Mao hesitated for a while and asked, I don't know who is wearing my gluttonous robe now. The rank of that robe is not high, but it has hidden mystery and it can be improved all the way. It was once a treasure in the treasure house of the Zhou Xian department of the Daoist dynasty. Otherwise Yang Mingxing would not choose to wear this. Robe went out to explore the beach of bones. Qin Pingon stretched out his sleeves and patted brother Mu Mao's shoulder. I didn't drink too much and talked a few drunken words. Be careful of your feet in the wind. Yang Mu Mao laughed loudly, his figure turned into a cloud of black smoke, and he drifted away to the north in an instant. Watching Yang Mu Mao go hundreds of miles away, Qin Pingon turned and walked back to Feishing City and said, Dongshan, that cottage, it's better to return Zuanduguan. This time Qin Pingon came to Feishing City temporarily, but of course he still missed Ningyao. In addition, Qin Pingon originally wanted to find Cui Dongshan once before leaving Wuxia world. After all, the Lubo Xianxia sect that Cui Dongshan first wanted to create is in this colorful world. On the side of Gongdalin, the old scholar once gave Qin Pingon an address. The route was clear and not too easy to find because there were many obstacles in the mountains and rivers, but it was not as difficult as finding a needle in a haystack. said that it was to make Qin Pingon the closed disciple free, so he went over there to take a look. The old scholar said righteously at the time, "Since your husband and Bai are also good friends of brothers, then you are naturally Bai's younger generation. It is your duty to do things like cleaning up the elders and you can't shirk them." Cui Dongshan nodded and said, "Of course, I just relax there so as not to be intercepted by Bai Yujing. I will not stay for long. I will leave as long as Xuantuguan Taoist takes over. There is no difference." The student looked at each other and smiled at each other. With Dao Changsun's temper, he can't give a peach to him? Long Hushan, whose surname is Great Celestial Master Liang Shuang, once asked Cui Dongshan where Yangshan was outside. Cui Dongshan didn't conceal it, saying that he was in the place of cultivation in Bei, and he was helping to take care of the abandoned thatched cottage. Bai also built a thatched cottage as a temporary place for cultivating in a place of victory in the colorful world. A peach tree with roots hundreds of miles deep. It is the top 10 mo de Dao edge in the colorful world. In the past he traveled to a new world with old talents. Bai also wielded swords, handed swords non-stop and opened up the world. Bai also possessed an immeasurable good fortune. It's just that Bai Yi didn't want that place, but he was going to give it to Xuandu Guan to repay Dao Changsun's grace of borrowing a sword. One of the 4 fairy swords, Tai Bai, was based on Bai Yi's earliest plan. He would give the peach tree and thatched cottage to Xiandu Guan, but then something happened suddenly. Bai also returned to Haoran alone with the sword to Fuyao Zhou. The fact that couldn't return the fairy sword became a knot of Bai Yi's heart. Fortunately, after being reincarnated, a man wearing a tiger hat child was taken by an old scholar to Xuandu Guan to practice. Before that, the old Xiuzai had taken the time to visit the cottage, and by chance he was not at home. How diligent and thrifty the old Xiuzai was. He picked up all the fallen peach petals under the tree, cleaned it up and installed a big one. Though this is the most suitable wine to use. Bai Yi is good at wine, but he is not good at wine. Old scholars can only do their own work. As for the remaining peach petals from the wine, you can also ask the white paper to make a few fortunes. 10 peach blossom letterheads. Next to the peach trees, the old Xiuzai did not take less of the 10,000 years of soil recorded in the old almanac of the Confucian temple as heavenly soil. The ground near the cottage is about an inch or 2 shorter. In fact, these are nothing. Bai also returned to the dojo. Even if he had seen it, he probably didn't see it, but the old scholar never let go of the branches of the peach tree and broke away dozens of peach branches. So after Bai Yi returned to the cottage, there was a special sword for the old scholar. Qin Pingon curiously asked, "Did you come to Feishing City by means of the Sanshan talisman?" Cui Dongshan's little chicken pecked at the rice. It's really hard to escape Mistress' eyes. His Yangshan's body, he casually compiled the identity of Shanzhou Yishio that year, swaggering into the colorful world from Tongyi's Hao. The only seedlings of the Fuzong and the pseudonym Yang Hengxin Yang Ningxin. In fact, they left Haoran at about the same time. At that time, Tongyi's his janitor was his uncle Zhua. Why? You are not convinced? Do you recognize one? After Cui Dongshan entered the new world of Zhanxin, he began to travel alone, and finally found a place that could be opened up as the next sect. The water transport is rich, the clouds are gorgeous. Cui Dongshan is happy to see it, and at first sight he sets up several formations. He took hundreds of miles of mountains and rivers as his own, and named a small hill as Dongshan. Without any trouble, Cui Dongshan also drew 2 paintings, which were clearly named Mustard Seed and Mountain River. With memory, it is tens of feet long, and the painting has millions of miles of magnificent mountains and rivers, but it is called Mustard Seeds. But another picture scroll, which clearly has only a little ink, was named Mountain and River by Cui Dongshan. Cui Dongshan scratched his face and said regretfully, "When the students are here, they are a couple of monks who have been a matchmaking bridge. Of course, those men and women need to be sincere enough to be the matchmaking mountain. But even so, the students still failed to create this. Fong Tianda's first pair of Taoists on the mountain was 1 step late. It was really just 1 step too late, and they could only watch that lucky fate missed." Qin Pingon shook his head and said, "It's definitely not just you who looks like a step late. Bai Yujing in the east, as well as the masters hidden among the refugees from Fuyazhou and Tongyi's Hao, have made similar attempts, and they are destined to be the same." Frustrated. Heaven's heart is unpredictable and people can't be counted by the sky. As long as you have the heart, you will definitely slow down. There is no solution. Don't underestimate this world's avenue. You can only rely on those secret heavens to decide on your own. Dongshan, don't do similar things in the future. They will be booked and they will also be paid back. Qin Pingon raised his head to look at the sky and murmured, God's will can't be violated. It's not just casual talk. Cui Dongshan nodded. If it weren't for this, I would follow my heart and choose the next address first, and then immediately rush back to the south. Among the gang of Tongyi's Hao migrants, I would choose one or two with dragon spirit. Casting the net widely and doing the act of helping the dragon for a few people who are qualified to be the kings of the world is really hitting the wall with manpower to create a Daoist couple, and dare not deliberately pursue that first humanity merit. Qin Pingon smiled and turned his head to comfort him. It seems that you don't do anything, just take it naturally and follow the trend, maybe you will be a little surprised. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, listen to Mr. Heaven and Earth are born. Like a child gradually opening up. A brand new world, and the world is full of surprises and opportunities arise everywhere. The first hanging statue, the ancestor hall on the mountain where the gods worshipped the incense, was acquired by Feixingcheng. Therefore all the sword repairs in Feixing City can actually get an invisible shelter. If it weren't for the favor of this avenue, the casualties of Feixingcheng Xianxia would have more than doubled amidst those weird landscapes and unexplored realms. The first Yupu realm in the colorful world, the first fairyland and the first ascending realm. And the number one person in the world recognized by Wuxia Tianxia Avenue. Are all Ningyao who broke the border and everything is like a smashing bamboo. In addition, Ningyao is still a sword repairer and has an extra gift. In addition, she was the first monk to kill the weird. Who competes with. So even a monk from the 14th realm from another world who dares to trespass into the colorful world. As long as Ningyao asks the sword once, there may be back and forth. Cui Dongshan asked, is the Sir aware of collecting gold, fine and copper coins? Is there any progress? Qin Pingon said helplessly, I'm really worried. Sword repairs natal flying sword. If you want to improve its rank, there are only two ways to go. One is to refine the flying sword. For example, it is a shortcut to sharpen the sword with the help of Zhenlong Tai, and the other is even more difficult. It is to find more natal powers. Qin Pingan's caged bird and the earliest well-end moon, through the battle with Wan Yaozong Immortal Han Yushu, and the later battle of Tuyue Mountain, the latter has been upgraded to a higher level of rank, and now has the present Qin Pingon made a rough derivation, and relied on a 14-level Taoist method borrowed from Luqian. At that time, one sword had successfully differentiated hundreds of thousands of flying swords. Qin Pingon had done a rough deduction. The future will be refined. At the peak of Iguchi Moon, relying on Qin Ping's own kendo realm high enough, it can roughly support 1 million flying swords in one go. In addition, Qin Pingon had been trying to use Jing Zongyi's many flying swords to reveal a truth in the Tao of Mind in the Dongtian Taoist Temple in Xindu Mountain. This means that Jing Zongyi's refining not only has a final direction, one is to increase the number of flying swords, and then he has found Jing Zongyi's second natal supernatural power, so Qin Pingon at this moment is equivalent to having one from nothing. There are roads. Only the bird in the cage has been stagnant. But Qin Pingon had an idea during the retreat, but he couldn't really try it for the time being. The reason is simple: lack of money. And maybe this kind of sword making is a bottomless pit. It is not the lack of 3 kinds of fairy money, but the gold essence and copper money, or trace the origin, the lack of the golden body fragments of the landscape god, or the glazed golden body that collapsed after the soldiers of the overhaul. The latter is hard to come by. Du Mao's ascension failed at the beginning. In order to fight for one of the glazed shards, even the sect Qijin personally took action on the Aquarius Island side. The former is relatively simple, and it is only relatively. In fact, in the vast world today, which dynasty does not want the golden body fragments of various gods? Which big sect does not want to buy? Ordinary monk who can really buy it? Because Qin Pingon wants to truly elevate the caged finches, which has become a small world by itself, to a realm of the avenue loops without omissions. This requires Qin Pingon to create a complete river of time in the cage. In this realm, who is not a caged bird? That Lu Kai, who is still in Hanzanji, has 2 flying swords, and he specifically restrains Qin Ping's 2 natal flying swords. When will you come? Lu Kai will try again. If you come to find me, I will find you. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, Zhongli long life is not an outsider. Qin Pingon nodded and said, I won't be polite to Changming. Cui Dongshan held back his laugh. I'm afraid that the long-lived fellow will give it all as soon as he gives it, and my husband is also worried. Qin Pingon laughed at himself. If something like worry is spread out, it's probably going to be beaten. Cui Dongshan asked, where is the Song family? Qin Pingon said, of course he will speak, but you have to find a suitable opportunity to avoid being raised on the ground. After all, it's not the senior brother of our spring palace. He likes to come and be killed by others. Cui Dongshan whispered, where is the teacher? Qin Pingon felt helpless and didn't say anything. This world's weird. Ning Yao can not only kill one, in addition to one of the ancient 12 high positions there are actually others. It's not that Qin Pingon is hypocritical, but I don't know why, I always feel that something is wrong. Of course there are Iazhao and Luxiazu, these two continents that have not been hit by the war. The mountains and rivers are stable, and the native mountains and waters of the two continents are not damaged. This means that all the golden bodies of the great monks in the great sections. Fragments can be bought and sold, of course, provided that the price is right and high enough. In addition, like the Lu family in Iazhao, there are also Baozhai who had dealt with Yuan Yangzi once, and Tiny Dongshan where the heatstroke of the shoe is located. The fairy Zhou Xian is located in the sect, and this woman fairy herself is also the land of Song Ai. Lord plus 100 Flowers Blessed Land, as well as the old ascended monk who had been friends with Daolong Chulong Xianxian. These people or Shantao's hands are rumored to have a different amount of family background. The key is gold and copper money. With the golden body fragments in their hands, they are not the kind of indispensable things. At most they are waiting for the price or they are looking for a buyer depending on the eye. Cui Dongshan sighed. If it's not for patching mountains and rivers, Tonggishao where our next clan is located is the best source of golden body fragments, and you can bargain at will. Qin Pingon smiled and said, just don't think about this kind of thing. Cui Dongshan asked, when will Mr. return to Xindu Mountain? Qin Pingon said helplessly, it's tonight. Cui Dongshan wanted to say something but stopped. Qin Pingon said, you guessed it right, I was planning to go and take a look at the sycamore tree before Lichuan. There are 9 majestic town buildings in the world. There are only 2 of them. The symbolic significance is greater than the actual use. Among them is the town demon building in Tonggishao. It is almost the same as the Jin Bei's building. It is really just a scholar. Doing some superficial work is almost the same. It's just that this town's demon building is unusual. It's not the architectural form but a long-lived and infinite phoenix tree. According to legend, this ancient tree is so old that it has survived for a long time. The patriarch of the Xianxia, in simple terms, is that it is older than the first person to cultivate the Taoism in the world. Therefore, even the brother Zhou Xian once said that when he was young he liked to travel around and had seen this towering tree. Possibility, it's just a possibility. The only Taoist priest who can prevail in this tree is the old master of Taoist Taoism in the East China Sea. During the war, the old master did not take care of the wild world at all. Instead, he gave out the iron ring made by the Taoist ancestor to help Howard the world protect the sycamore tree, and he has never been intimately involved by Wen Hai. Cui Dongshan wanted to say something but stopped. Obviously, it is still the choice of Mr. Don't Worry. This surprised Xiaomo. The son just went to take a look at the phoenix tree. On the side of Sect Master Cui, how could it be like going to Longtan Tiger's cave? Qin Pingon smiled and said, I'm doing something artificial, can it be the same as yours? Cui Dongshan's expression is a bit low. Xiaomo became even more weird. After that, Qin Pingon did not return directly to the wine shop, but temporarily changed his mind. He took the 2 of them to fly across Feishing City and came to the boundary of Zifu Mountain. After falling down, he stood next to the ridge of a rice field. The rethinking rice presented by Deng Liang is temporarily limited by the soil and can only be ripened once a year. It has very high requirements on water and soil and is not easy to plant. Later, when the land is fertile, it can be ripened twice a year. A young farmer's gas trainer rushed over immediately. His eyes were full of alertness and he asked, Who are you, don't you know the rules? Just listen to the green shirt guest laughing. My name is Qin Pingon. The man was stunned on the spot. After he recovered, he asked in a low voice, Will the hidden officer stay for a long time? Qin Pingon shook his head and said, He'll leave soon. The man hurriedly said, The hidden officer, don't go in a hurry, wait for me to get paper and pen, don't worry. Qin Pingon was confused. Soon the young monk who came to Feishing City with his master to discuss life, took a writing brush dipped in ink and 2 prints and brazenly asked, "My lord the hermit, can you write your name? It would be even better if I could add a gift of good fortune." Qin Pingon was embarrassed as if it was the first time he did this kind of thing. "I am not a literary magnate like Su Ziliyuki." The young monk was full of hope. Qin Pingon had to take the imprint and brush, and wrote his name on the pages of the Yinpu of Baijiangxian and Yinpu of Zhenxian, respectively, and wrote a gift for each after drying the ink. Handed it to the young monk, never thought that the other party blushed, took it in a hurry, bit the scalp and asked tentatively, "His master, can you write the year, month and day?" Qin Pingon smiled and wrote down the date again, adding 4 words at the end, "In the Bank of Tianlong." In fact, the smiling Qin Pingon was more embarrassed than the flushed young monk. "Make up your mind, this kind of activity really can't be done anymore." The young man is holding a writing brush and embracing the imprint, and thanked the approachable hermit. Looking at the farm monk who left happily, Cui Dongshan squatted on the ridge with grass roots in his mouth. Qin Pingon sat aside, reached out and grabbed a handful of soil, held it in the palm of his hand and smiled. "Okay, don't be depressed, it's not a big deal." Cui Dongshan was still worried and said softly, "Mister, don't you want all the merits that he has finally accumulated? With Mr. S temper, as long as you go to the sycamore tree, you will definitely do that. Once you do that, not only will you be destined to have no merit, you will even lose all the merits of the previous Confucian Temple merit book." Qin Pingon looked ahead and said calmly, "I can keep a little bit and I will need it next time. It's not enough, just forget it." Cui Dongshan chewed on the grass roots and asked, "In this case you will be in a quagmire. What about the sir's practice?" Qin Pingon asked, "Isn't it practice?" Cui Dongshan was silent. Xiao Imo was like listening to the 2 students playing dumb riddles. Because he heard Cui Dongshan mention the sun's practice, he couldn't help but ask, "Cui Dongshan, can you tell me?" Cui Dongshan sighed. 6-year-old stars circle the sun once and 12 years is the first era. Xiao Imo became more and more like falling clouds. Cui Dongshan had to explain in detail. At that time Tongji's Hao fell, mountains and rivers fell, and rituals and music collapsed. Under the deliberate persecution and traction of the barbaric military account, all kinds of people have ugly hearts and all kinds of rebellious behaviors. People and things are countless. How did the children born during that period come? Are their biological parents really a husband and wife? They are not. Whether it is counted from the day the wild world occupied Tongji's Hao, or recalculated after the Yaozu exited the Haoran world, it doesn't matter. Is there a difference whether it's already a epoch or a epic? These children are destined anyway and no one can escape. If Tongji's Hao is still in the wilderness of the world, I won't talk about him. The origins of those children are not the slightest difference in the eyes of the wild monks, but in the eyes of today's Haoran world, they will be heretics. Is a kind of sordid kind who may be dirty with a few words. Those children came to this world as if they were born with sins. They shouldn't have come, but they have come. Even if these children will survive in the years to come. After passing the pointers of others, withstanding all kinds of verbal abuse from the backbone, avoiding many man-made disasters and natural disasters, because even if they are lucky enough to grow up, they will never be restored to the orthodox mountains and rivers of Tongji's Hao. What is accepted by Qi luck, let alone practice, may just be alive. It is a kind of hardship, not necessarily death, not necessarily early death, but this life will definitely endure hardships, suffer a lot, maybe their life. I will always feel that life is better than death, unprovoked misery, inexplicable disasters and unsuccessful things. It is said that God's sins are forgivable and self-inflicted sins cannot live. But these children seem to have no choice. But if you don't care about it, time after the time of Jiazi, it's like a stubble of mountains and grass has passed and it will also pass. Cui Dongshan fell back on his back, no longer speaking. Xiao Imo sat cross-legged, turning his head and looking away. Qin Pingon sits on Tianlong. Xiaomo did not hear any rhetoric. The man in the green shirt just said softly, "I think this is wrong." Sort of coming Chapter 9:16. Qin Pingon got up alone and walked along the ridge because an old friend came. Qisho came from Wuxia City, now the leader of the criminal officer line. Qisho opened the door and said, "If you don't come to Quan Mansion to find me, I will have to hang a heart, so I might as well take the initiative to send it to the door and ask for a few curses." Who doesn't know the young hidden official in the summer palace with strange stories like a big basket of natal flying swords, swords piercing the heart? Qin Pingon smiled and said, We are friends with Brother Qi. Now Brother Qi is promoted again. I have no time to pat on the horse. How dare I point fingers at a new criminal officer? The two walked side by side on the ridge and Qi Shou said, I heard that the former criminal is called Haosu? Ning Yao returned to Feishing City last time. She didn't elaborate on the process of your wild trip. So far I am too. Just know his name. For Jian Xiu, who is in the line of criminal officers, he has always had a small knot, that is, he has broken his family tree, because he took office as a criminal officer until the end of the war and never showed up. In contrast, the line of hidden officials, generations of hidden officials, has an orderly inheritance. Regardless of the reputation of the hidden officials, the level of realm, the size of the battle, it is well documented and the pedigree is clear. As for the previous hermit Shaoxun's betrayal of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, it is not just the current Jianxiu in the Summer Palace, the entire Feishingcheng, there is not much complaint against her. So now talking about Shaoxun, there is no taboo, not only will not deliberately avoid it. Not to mention in the opposite there are quite a lot of regrets. The three Jianxiu who defected with Shaoxun, the janitor Zhang Lu, Luo Shan and Zhuan in fact, do not swear verbally and occasionally they scold that Zhang Lu is a waste of money. Since he has chosen to betray, he might as well simply follow Shaoxing and travel around the world. Qin Pingon nodded and said, Haosu came from a long-broken blessed land in Fuyaozhou. He spent his early years on the Great Wall of Sword Qi and stayed in the prison of old deaf children. Therefore his reputation is not obvious. In fact, his swordsmanship is very high. After returning to the Haoran world, I directly found the master behind the destruction of his hometown's blessed land, an old ascending realm in the Middle-earth divine continent, named Nanguangzhou. Haosu had his head cut off by Haosu and left him at the gate of the mountain. Su walked through the barren world with us and he slaughtered the ascendant demon Profound Garden in Xiandan City, which was equivalent to having in confession at the Confucian temple to make up for the merits. So now he has gone to the Qingming world. Haosu, I will repair Dong Wafis Dao Yuan Yu sword a bit. Qi Shou took out a seal that he had bought from Yan's silk and satin shop and asked someone for help and said with a smile, Unfortunately, I have never been able to buy the best plum edition of Mr. Kong Jie's Kong Yang Ji. Qin Pingon glanced at the seal and knew that it was the seal engraved on the square base. But I have not reached the quartet, which is quite in line with Qi Shou's situation and mood. Neither has been to the Haoran world, nor is it considered to have been to the wild world. The world is so vast but it can only be located in a corner. After all, Qi Shou is high in heart. Qi Shou held the seal in his palm like a handle and asked, The ancestor of my family? Qin Pingon joked. Where does the old sword fairy Qi need you to worry? It has long been famous in the Haoran world. The Dragon Elephant Sword sect also has Lu Ji and 2 soaring cases are all sword repairs. No one is afraid. In addition, Xiao Yunyan and Mrs. Yanyan offered to the 5 realms to help with general affairs. The dozen or so named disciples collected by Qi Lao Jianxian there are all very qualified and are known as the 18 swordsmen. The first-class sword fairy embryos, the Dragon Elephant Sword sect will not take 100 years, and only need to collect more guest Qing and pass on more disciples, and it will become the most top-notch sect in the world. Qi Shou hesitated for a moment. It seemed that some words were difficult to express. He stopped and squatted down. After putting the seal in his sleeve, he reached out to grab a golden ear of rice with reconsidered rice on the side of the field. As a result, he suffered a sentence from Qin Pingon. Why do you owe your hands so much? Qin Pingon sat aside, then picked up a stone, raised his cloth shoes and scraped the mud lightly and smiled casually. Firen is now recognized as a wild co-lord. Brother Qi is good. He hasn't even become the lord of Feishing City. I was only said to be half a city owner and I have to fight the injustice for Brother Qi. Since you are embarrassed to speak, then I will help you build a step. Qi Shou slowly said, Qin Pingon, am I not going to be that city lord in my life? Qin Pingon asked, Why do you have this question? Qi Shou said, Intuition. Qin Pingon smiled and said, You're not a girl, so a woman's instinct is accurate. Qi Shou asked a series of questions. What's the matter with the 2 empty chairs in the Zushitang? Is it your arrangement? Or is there something special such as the matter that the old sword fairy confessed? Ning Yao did not say why. The outside world has guessed for so many years and there is no definite answer. The most credible point of view is that of the 2 suspended seats, one is reserved for the future city owner, and the other is reserved for the number 1 person in the colorful world. This is true, it is more in line with the style of the boss sword fairy. Qin Pingon shook his head and said, I don't know. Maybe it was the boss sword fairy who made Ning Yao arrange like this. Look back and ask. In fact, what Qin Pingon really wants to ask is actually Qin Ji or the old sword fairy Xianxia in his early years. Qi Shou asked, if it is for you to guess? Why do you think it is? Qin Pingon thought for a while and said softly, the past is over and the future has not yet arrived. The two chairs will be empty forever. They are not empty. Anyway, they are like two sword repairmen sitting next to each other. But not a specific person, not Qi Shou who is still struggling to become the lord of the city, or even Ning Yao who is already the #1 person in the world. It is just all the sword repairs who have not been forgotten in the past, and the future will become the future. All of the sword repairs. Qi Shou thought about it and felt that Qin Pingan's provisional answer was quite reasonable and very interesting. He couldn't help but exclaimed, sure enough, he is a scholar. Qin Pingan angrily smiled and said, if you finally talk to you a little bit, you just don't know what is good or bad, right? Qi Shou has arms around his chest, looking at the golden rice field just like the seal in his former prime minister, and the side paragraph says that the house is full of people sure has sui feng and the muscles healthy. Otherwise, with his friendship with Qin Pingan, how could he take care of the business of the Yan's shop? Just pinch his nose, hold his heart and ask someone to help by the seal of love at first sight. Qi Shou was silent for a moment and said, although it is the most impossible thing, but my instinct tells me that the sword repairer with the latest engraving on the top of the city is not my ancestor Ning Yao or criminal Hao Su or Lu Ji. Qin Pingan smiled, spread a palm and lightly touched Tian Rong. There is only one thing that makes me feel the most satisfied. Well, I'm very happy to have done this. Qi Shou turned his head and glanced at the guy's side face. His eyebrows were flying, and his expression was indeed somewhat rare and cheerful. An undisguised sharpness. Qin Pingan raised one hand, put his fingers together, swiped it down, wiped it horizontally and then spread his fingers apart. Repair the wild sword who has a natal flying sword leaf in, the Hui Ting of the red leaf sword sect. Split a sword in half, then cut it at the waist, use the Daomen mine board to refine and kill his soul, and then strip off this guy's real name of the monster race. It's very enjoyable to kill like this. If it wasn't for the time I had to ask others. Sword, I actually still have a lot of methods waiting for Hui Ting to take it away. Qi Shou, Nailan Seihuan and Mi Yu all belong to the sword repairmen who are known for their fierce methods on the battlefield, but when they heard Qin Pingan's words, their scalp was still a little numb. I just heard that Hui Ting finally died, which made Qi Shou really in a good mood. He turned sideways and took the initiative to clasp his fists and said, this thing is done beautifully. Qin Pingan said, but Hui Ting was trying to save a friend at the time and it belonged to him to die. Probably in the eyes of the monks in the wild world he also belongs to the hero? Qi Shou sneered and said, this guy just didn't fall into my hands. Qin Pingan tweeted, what if it falls into your hands? Can you do Hewiting under the eyelids of Tuyue Mountain and the culprit? You have to know that the chief disciple of this wild great ancestor is still a person who can't hide deeply. Lose Ascension Realm sword repair. Qi Shou asked curiously, then how did you let Hui Ting fall into the trap and how did you make the culprit too late? Qin Pingan did not give an answer. There is always such a small group of monks in the wild world who hate the Great Wall of Sword Qi most, but they cannot kill them. For example, when Hei's thoughtful disciple Sword Immortal Shouchen, and this sinister special-purpose assassination of female Jianxiu Hui Ting. And Hui Ting looked particularly hateful. No matter how hateful he was good at hiding his identity on the battlefield and liked to pick up military exploits. However, in history he had repeatedly asked the sword head-on. Moreover, his sword was not accurate. Will deliberately target whom, and Hui Ting only chooses the female sword repairer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi to improve the rank of Fijian's favorite, regardless of level or age, and every time he succeeds he immediately withdraws from the battlefield. Those women who were beheaded by Feijian would end up miserably, and their souls would be detained by Feijian and then refined, like the slow burning of a wick. Qi Shou asked, the location of the academy has been selected properly, don't you go there to see it? Qin Pingan shook his head and said, let's talk about it next time. I will return to Howren World soon. Qi Shou curled his lips. There are figures of elders everywhere. After so many years, it seems that they are still not clean and it is really annoying. Qin Pingan smiled and said, Brother Qi, this flattery is a bit of a standard. When I reach my Luopa mountain I can at least be an outside handyman. Qi Shou intends to stand up and leave, and Qin Pingon suddenly said, "Farewell is imminent, then I will speak to the new criminal officer as a senior hermit?" Qi Shou nodded and said, "Listen to your ears." Qin Pingon stretched out his palm and patted Tianlong next to him. "Don't think about erasing the traces, you have to cover them. Over time the achievements will be yours." Qi Shou was surprised Qin Pingon was so open-minded. Just a second thought, Qi Shou immediately felt that something was wrong and asked, "Are you not going to return to Ascending City? You won't open the door next time?" Qin Pingon said, "How is it possible? I will definitely come here often." Qi Shou smiled and scolded, "Then what are you talking about with me?" Qin Pingon sighed, "Senior fellows should treat each other with admiration for 3 days. Now Brother Qi is not easy to cheat." Qi Shou got up and left. Qin Pingon suddenly threw a seal over. "I'm here for you." Qi Shou took the hand. The seal was not boundless, only the 4-character seal. Qi Shou smiled knowingly, put it in his sleeve and thanked Qin Pingon. "The way is right." In fact, during the years when Qin Pingon was not in Feixiangcheng, there were some arty guys who wanted to make money by selling seals in batches with the second shopkeeper, who wanted to make money by selling seals. Anyway, there is no capital for this stuff. The content of the printed text is nothing more than copying. It's just a book. I always think it's a simple trick with no threshold. As a result, one of the seals could not be sold, let alone one by one. The second shopkeeper just threw his cheeks on the ground. Blah. Before Qi Shou Yufeng returned to Feixing City, he smiled and said, "Mutual encouragement." Qin Pingon nodded and said, "Mutual encouragement." Xiao Mo squatted beside the white-clothed boy and comforted, "Sect Master Cui, the gentleman has something to do and what not to do. Some things have to be done and some things don't have to be done. You and I are relieved. It is better to bring up your spirits and see for 100 years. Thousands of years later, perhaps today's loss is the promise of the Great Road." Cui Dongshan squeezed out a smile. "I understand the truth, but I feel a little distressed." Xiao Mo smiled and said, "If you think so, it will make the son add more thoughts. The husband will only love the students in turn. But I also think that with such a seemingly mediocre self-disturbing, the 2 most intelligent people in the world, Gongzi and Sect Master Cui, are not so smart. Maybe they are the real students? It looks like some nonsense. Practicing swords by himself and asking others about swords, Xiao Mo thinks it's okay. Only to persuade others, it is indeed not Xiao Mo's director. It's really much harder than handing a sword." Having been quietly listening to Xiao Mo's words, Cui Dongshan shook his head vigorously and said, "It's not nonsense." After Qin Pingon and Qi Shou recounted their old days, they returned along the Tianlongjuan road and found that Cui Dongshan seemed to have a good chat with Xiao Mo and had a smiling face. "We went back to our own wine shop in Feixingcheng. When I heard that the second shopkeeper had not only returned, I also opened the door personally today." The old patrons swarmed in immediately. Many of them came temporarily from the 4 vassal cities Yujian anyway. It's either a drunk or a bachelor. Of course there are both drunks and bachelors. Soon the wine shop is overcrowded, but it's not the same as before. They don't grab the wine table and like to squat on the side of the road. The second shopkeeper always likes to drink on the side of the road. Listening to the talk of those old friends, everyone was talking loudly and the alcohol was soaring. It was still the same as in the past. The second shopkeeper listened to more and talked less, not to say anything else about this meal, at least drank a lot of deeply hidden. The wine trays have revealed their identities, such as the old Jin Dan Song Yue. The dusk was heavy, and when the wine shop was about to close, Qin Pingon, who drank often during the day, asked Taoban to move out a few jars of Dumb Lake wine, and then asked Feng Kangel to talk to his father and help fry a table of homemade wine and vegetables. Xing Dafeng curiously asked, "What are you doing? What good is it for me to get drunk? Besides, you vomited 3 times. Can you really handle it?" Qin Pingon said arrogantly, "Don't talk nonsense until one party gets drunk." Xing Dafeng laughed and said, "Then make an appointment in advance. No one is allowed to persuade him to drink, but he is allowed to drink by himself." Qin Pingon agreed without hesitation. Xiao Mo and Cui Dongshan sat at the next table. Only Qin Pingon and Xing Dafeng drank 2 bowls of wine before they drank 2 bowls of wine. Then a young-looking man in green shirt came and walked slowly to the wine shop. Xing Dafeng glanced at him and recognized him. He seemed to be a teacher from a school in the city. His surname was Wu. He had been to the wine shop several times over the years, but he was not a frequent visitor. If it was spread flat, it would only be once or twice a year. The next time I came, I would go to the shop to look at the accident card. Mr. Wu came to the shop before and he always drank the bowl of Zhedangshan wine with a snowflake money, but the last time he came it seemed to be replaced by a bowl of Dumb Lake wine and he took away a jar. The reason why Jing Dafeng remembers so clearly is that the bookish spirit on the other side is relatively rare in the Great Wall of Jianqi. Like him, he belongs to those who have a poem and book spirit, but he is not as outstanding as his own. Xiao Imo squinted his eyes, immediately changed a wine table and said in his heart, "My son, this person is not easy. He behaves strangely as if he knows that I am not easy to deal with, but deliberately let me know that his is not easy." Xiao Imo hesitated for a moment and gave a guess in his mind, "Is it really that palace master Wu?" Qin Pingon nodded and said, "It must be." Then Qin Pingon glanced at Xiao Imo, still smiling. Xiao Imo was a little wronged and I didn't laugh at him at the time. Qin Pingon got up and made a salute. Wu Shuangjiang just bowed his hands back. Wu Shuang landed on the seat and said, "At the school under the pseudonym Wu Yu, there is evidence to check on the summer palace. You can check it out if you are interested." Hearing this pseudonym, Qin Pingon was speechless. Jing Dafeng was puzzled again and asked, "Similar to Brother Mu Mao but also an old friend?" Qin Pingon introduced, "I am the master of Wu Palace, who is the master of the palace." Jing Dafeng suddenly said, "No wonder." Wu Shuangjiang smiled and clasped his fist. "I have never spent a coin in these years, and I have heard Mr. Jing's witty words for free, and every time he just brought it to drink." Jing Dafeng still stepped on the bench with one leg, put down the wine bowl, held his fist in return and said, "Mr. Wu passed the prize." Qin Pingan was silent for a long time and asked, "Which calendar?" Wu Shuangjiang nodded and said, "It was my handwriting. But I have already paid back the favor of Feixingcheng. Helped Feixing City solve 3 small hidden dangers. Otherwise the expansion of Feixing City would be delayed for at least 30 to 50 years. It was not by Yu Jing's plan. Dao's second child disdained such actions and that Dao ancestor's close disciple, a young Taoist with the Dao name Shanqing, of course had very good practice aptitude, but he did not have the brain and the courage. Don't underestimate the long-term vision and meticulous methods of some strategists. There are always some people who may only have a few pennies in their pockets, but they dare to think about being rich, a world thing. It is whimsical that ordinary people dare to think so, but there are always a few people who want to do it. However, Wu Shuangjiang is not in the mood and has no obligation to explain the matter to Qin Pingon. Currently, Feixingcheng is only using this new calendar, but if the entire colorful world passes through this book and spreads the world in the future, then Wu Shuangjiang has his own means to make up for the second favor. Xiaomo went to get a pair of bowls and chopsticks and handed them to Wu Shuangjiang. Wu Shuangjiang smiled and nodded in greeting. "Welcome to go to Qingming World to be the last year's exclusion." Xiaomo smiled and said, "It depends on what the sun means." Cui Dongshan came to this wine table with a wine bowl and sat on a bench with Xiaomo, sitting opposite Wu Shuangjiang, and said with a grin, "You can touch Palace Master Wu wherever you go." Wu Shuangjiang said indifferently, "It's by fate." Cui Dongshan exclaimed, "The Lord of Wu Palace is the Lord of Wu Palace. He is in harmony with his spirit and he knows everything beyond the world. Now he knows everything in the palm of his hand." Wu Shuangjiang said, "There are some things that are not only done by Zhou and Xiuhu, others can't do it." Cui Dongshan asked with a smile, "If you want to come to the Western Buddhist country, there is also a clone of Palace Master Wu who is waiting to suddenly resuscitate someday, right?" Wu Shuangjiang's true body should still be wandering in the wild world. No matter where Wu Shuangjiang travels and has everything within his sight, in the interconnected awe-inspiring world and wild world, the Huawei Tianma who stays at the Chaotu shop in Qilong Alley is now the outer door handyman disciple of Luopa Mountain. Huang Ho, everything is like seeing each other with her own eyes. Seeing that Wu Shuangjiang pretended to be deaf and dumb, Cui Dongshan couldn't beat him. A good man from the Huayan Dharma realm, go for the Daoist Tianren. Palace Master Wu is really generous and a good method. Qin Pingon was shocked when he heard this. Mentioned that Wu Shuangjiang left the pass. At that time he took the initiative to show up at Daxuandi Temple and went to see Daochang's son and Bai Yi. The weather when Wu Shuangjiang first entered the 14th realm, the husband gave an evaluation of the flaw in the beauty. Previously in Ningfu, Qin Pingon saw the seals made of frosty jade, and mistakenly thought that Wu Shuangjiang was just separating out a mustard seed. He passed the crane in an upside-down mountain early and was hidden in the Great Wall of Jianqi. It turned out that Wu Shuangjiang removed it. Besides, he stripped of his mind and went to the Western Buddhist country? Doesn't you take the 14th level seriously? A cultivator must have such a high level of Taoism. How good his cultivation qualifications, and what exaggerated conceit is he to dare to act like this? Is it? Qin Pingon instantly turned pale and hurriedly lowered his head to drink. Wu Shuangjiang took a sip of wine and smiled. It's not just the master teacher and Qi Jingchun who can do it. Wu Shuangjiang can do it. It's not the simplest way to learn. It is difficult to open the mountain, but as long as it is visited by the predecessors. After a path is out, climbing is easier after all, just follow behind. Cui Dongshan said in a deep voice. No, you leave earlier and go earlier. Qi Jingchun only started this matter in Lizhu Cave, trying to cast the roots of the 3 teaching questions for one family. As for the head teacher of Bai Yujing, who is old, he may have thought of this unprecedented road a long time ago, but the 3 people including Li Shixing really put it into action. It was also a very later thing. Wu Shuangjiang shook his head and said, there is a problem here. Of course I know that it is a very high road, but I don't have the confidence to pave the road by myself, so I stayed at the foot of the mountain. The seal that Master Guan gifted to Gao Yeho is nothing more than to follow the rules, and it will be much easier. As for Tianlong, Master Hermit and Qi Shou made an analogy, saying that the act of covering did not dare to expect too much. In the end, I just pick up the leaks. At most it is to build a wall. The predecessors built a strong and reliable corner. It doesn't matter if the descendants add some waste bricks and thatch on the top. Can also shield the wind and rain. I did not prove it by this. Daoist's confidence and strength, not to mention the ambition, do not need to go too far on this road. Cui Dongshan sneered and said, it is exactly the same as the 4 imitation sorts of refining, they are all picking up people's teeth. Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, then you also try it? Cui Dongshan raised his sleeves and pointed his finger at Wu Shuangjiang. Don't irritate me, I'm a young man with a big temper. I'm a young man with a vigorous and prosperous temper. I can't stand the stimulus if I don't care about my head. Before, in that night boat, the husband was sent to wait for him by this Wu Shuang. At that time the 4 people joined hands. By coincidence they are also 4 now, but the chief of the week was replaced by Xiaoma. Have a fight. What's more, it's still in Feixingcheng right now. Once the teacher chooses to give her sword with all her strength, Tihi. Wu Shuangjiang glanced at the eager white-clothed young man. I am just the Jade Pu realm, so why bother to excite people like this? One Cui Dongshan is enough. Qin Pingon glared at Cui Dongshan. Respect the Lord Wu Palace. Xing Dafeng persuaded the drinker. Brother Cui, hurry up and mention one. Cui Dongshan had to drink a full bowl. Wu Shuangjiang gently shook the wine bowl and reminded Qin Pingon. This time I'm actively looking for you. I don't want her half of the Taoist guardian to seem to be advancing bravely and diligently on the path of spiritual practice, but somehow they will be planted within 100 years. A big somersault, the way is not successful, but it will also affect her moodiness. She's the most soft-hearted. If one day she will never stay out of the matter, then I will come back to you again. What is the meaning and meaningless thing? So one thing must be clear, it's time to pay attention to those 14th realm cultivators, as well as the ascended realm cultivators who have the hope of reaching this realm. This is not a matter of the horizon, it is the immediate matter. If you are not careful, it is the person in front of you. Like me. Qin Pingon nodded. Although he had actually had similar concerns for a long time, he has realized the many changes after the changing of the sky. It is absolutely not allowed to have swordsman pay men first and then the night ship Wu Shuangjiang, and then someday someone will come again. The same thing can be repeated, but there are no more than 3 things. But Qin Pingon had to admit that if Wu Shuangjiang does not appear today, his attention is far from enough. At least in Wu Shuangjiang's eyes, it is definitely not enough. Wu Shuangjiang smiled and asked, Qin Pingon, you would never think that except for me, those cultivators at the peak of the Ascension realm, whose realm has been stagnated for thousands of years, are in a daze every day, right? Cui Dongshan slapped the table and dismantled it and said, Wei Xiaomo is sleeping. Xiao Imo smiled and nodded, very cheering, a dream of 1,000 years, full sleep. Wu Shuangjiang turned a deaf ear and said, For thousands of years, the height and depth of Taoism in the world has not been improved by several big steps, and even the matter of knowledge has not really been separated from the stalemate of the early philosophers. As for the larger literal barrier, not to mention it, but with the continuous integration of Taoism and human nature, the breadth of Taoism brought about by it is not comparable to that 10,000 years ago. Xiao nodded. I've been around with the sun, I've seen it roughly and thought about it a little bit, but it's not as concise as Palace Master Wu said. Cui Dongshan said with sorrow, Xiao, are you surrendering to the enemy? Xiao smiled shyly. He was just discussing the matter, but he was still a little apologetic, so he brought up a bowl of drinks. Qin Pingon humbly asked for advice. Except for the great monk who participated in the riverside meeting, I've seen them all. Now what kind of ascendant realms are there that can hope to cross that threshold? Wu Shuangjiang gave Qin Pingon one by one, pointing the country. 14 realm monks. Don't talk about the great monks of Yaxing and Wenxing who are in a proper place. The head teacher of Bai Yujing, the first disciple of the Taoist ancestor, was missing. Except for the Confucian Li Shixing from Tianfilu Street in Lizhu Cave, plus the Taoist Zhou Li from the gods to Qingxuanzong to see the pipeline hidden, the last one is left and it is still covered by clouds. Bai also reincarnated, Aoyang fell into the realm and Lu Cha fell into the realm. The preacher master of Jianxiu is brilliant, and the old throne big demon Qiun, the old monk with the pseudonym Lu Fian, has long been reduced to when Hai Zhou is belly lunch, and it is Zhou Mi who wins the battle and eats it by himself. Then except for the Sui Chu Gong Wu Shuangjiang, who refined the heart demon into a Taoist companion. There is also Baidi City Jing Zhongzhong. 24 per person. This is a great magician who has worked hard to prove that I am the ancestor of Taoism. Da's second child Yudo. He has a feather robe handed down by Taoist ancestors, and holds the Dao Zong, one of the 4 immortal swords. It is rumored that the Grand Master has actually handed over the entire Bai Yujing to this junior. It is no wonder that Yudo will be regarded as the first person to practice the Taoism other than the ancestor of the 3 religions. 3 palms teach Lu Qin 5 dreams and 7 attitudes. Others are among the 14 realms. It is a kind of harmony, and Lu Qin is more like a kind of prosperity. The Wild World, the Rise of the Hall of Valor. As the preacher of Jing Juzhong Qin Qinglu, the Dragon Slayer, there is no real dragon in the world, and he will fall into the ascending state. If there is a real dragon in the world, he will rise to the 14th state. The way of harmony is similar to the establishment of a Buddhist aspiration. Mr. Sanshan Jioho. If you really want to trace the origin of the so-called 72 talismans, the originator of the world's talisman, at least half of them must be recognized as ancestors with this person. So Z. One person occupies half of the Yin and Yang family. Apart from the many Taoist traditions in the world, he has a new face, self-reliance, and combines the 5 elements. Chicken Soup Old Monk. The monk is very clear. Said to be half the power of a 14th level monk and a half 14 level monk's defense. It is rumored that even if it is against the previous ascending level sword repairer, the old monk stands still, the sword repairer can cut 3 times. Days and nights. The old blind man of 100,000 mountains in the wild world, his way of coordinating with Taoism is still a mystery. Guan Taoism and Old Guanzhou. A Dao some kind of time. Wu Shuangjiang said, you have to pay special attention to one person, the female crown Wuzhou in the Qingming world. She has the name Taiyin. I was on the riverside and I have seen it. Her method of harmony can be roughly called refining things. In the entire Qingming world, it has only collected 18 relics of ancient gods for thousands of years. The ownership, circulation, and inheritance of each heavy weapon will be recorded one by one in the White Jade Kyoto. In addition to one of the ranks of our continent, the extremely high magic weapon has allowed her to obtain the magical powers of the 12 high-ranking gods, the Forge. In addition, her 5 elements belong to the natal thing, and they are all antiquated relics of thin-influenced, unlisted, unrecorded. No matter the rank is not high, if you use the number to make up, the weather is very impressive. In addition, she is known as the #1 refiner in the world, capable of casting semi-immortal soldiers or even immortal soldiers as a monk of the 14th realm, but for so many years, no one knows how many immortal soldiers Wuzhou has in his hands. My Zhou Daoxing is extremely tough. It shouldn't be possible to enter the 14th realm with only refining objects. On the contrary, it will become a burden for her to cross the sky. So she took a shortcut. She took her own Dao, the skin, hair, muscles, bones and flesh were all refined into a state of emptiness. In the end she used her own nothing to carry the being of many natal things. Therefore this move was called disconnection by Zhou Xian, which was a very appropriate one. It's a metaphor. But not many people know about this incident. It's a secret leaked by Zhou Xian at Sui Qigong. Hearing this, Xing Dafeng couldn't help but interrupted and said, "Will this auntie be too cruel? Who dares to marry her?" Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, "It's hard to say whether anyone dares to marry her. Anyway, there is no Daoist couple in our continent and she has a very high spirit. Of course, she does have this qualification." Qin Pingon heard Zhou Xian talk about a group of martial arts masters in the Qingming world. Zhou Xian did not mention our continent less, and his words were only slightly less hard work. Wu Shuangjiang took a chopsticks dish and took a sip of wine. If it weren't for Bai Yujing and Yao Qing, the white lotus root with a short halberd would have died suddenly. It was not Yao Qing's secret protection. Having reached a certain agreement with Wu Zhou, Bai O Root will never become a female national teacher of the Qingshan dynasty, and she will not be able to enter the end. If I didn't guess wrong, Wu Zhou has already followed you. So you have to be careful. You have 2 narrow knives for execution and slashing. The youngsters have spent money in the bustling city, and the crooked heart is not a human being. Wait until those 3 are gone someday, and then before you reach the 14th realm, you just have to meet our continent, huh? Qin Pingon nodded and said, "I will pay attention." To travel secretly in the Qingming world in the future, in addition to hiding from Bai Yujing, she must avoid our continent and she will definitely not be able to find a trace. Qin Pingon doesn't want to learn from Liz Hen and conceive potential. Was followed by a 14th realm cultivator who was determined to kill and overtake, and then came to the door. Once there was no defense and no countermeasures, the consequences would be disastrous. Fu Lu Yu Xian He Dao Xinghe. It was the most sacred master himself who opened the way for him, so it was almost a foregone conclusion that Yu Xian entered the 14th realm. Brother around. The great master of Dragon and Tiger Mountain Zhao Tianlai. The fairy sword 10,000 ways. Lu Jubao the god of wealth Ai Aizhou. Pei Min, one of the 3 great swordsmanship in the past years. Xian Du Guan Guanzhu Sun Huaizhong. The 5th person in the world who can't be touched by thunder in Qingming. Qingshan dynasty, Yixiang Yao Qing. Cut the 3 corpses and then refine the 3 corpses. Once the 3 corpses are recovered, it is very likely to be one of the 14th realms. Chaoga, Dao number re-examination and ascend to the pinnacle. She is now Su Jun's Dao companion. In her early years she was one of the 10 people in the world of Qingming. Only because of the long retreat she was gradually forgotten, so that afterwards several sect masters from practice to death never met this female ancestor. The year-old night watchman nicknamed Xiaobai. The little white in my house to a certain extent actually has a certain avenue conflict with Yao Qing. Yao Qing's road number is Shou Ling Xiaobei's so-called night watch is actually a kind of Saul guard. I asked him to come upside down Xianshan and set up a stork inn. Why do you think it is? Is it really just to help me find her? Since I am a mustache, I am already in the Great Wall of Jianqi. Do I need to do this? Su Zi and Lu Qi now have hope. It depends on who can fill in the position that was left earlier. This great dispute is a dispute between scholars and scholars. There is no need for the 2 sides to fight. Wu Shuangjiang drank a bowl of wine. It's just a pity that Qin Chunan and Liang Shuang. Nan Pasozhou is mellow, Qin Chunan who carries the sun and the moon on his shoulders. In order to prevent Lu Cha from returning to the barren world, he did not hesitate to die. Unfortunately, the Confucian scholar is not domineering, and the article fails to pass the sky. The great celestial master Liang Shuang, who originally relied on water milling kung fu, to continue on a certain road with great hope to break the boundary. As a result, the assassination of Zhou Mi failed, resulting in lifelong hopelessness in the 14 realms. The rise of military strategists is unstoppable. The ghosts and immortals with different paths, the circulation of the money of the immortals, the flying sword spreads the letter, the mirror flower water and the moon. Outside the Sanjiao family, among the hundreds of scholars, there will definitely be people taking advantage of the situation. If it were not for the rules of the Saint of Rights, the ancestors and masters of the philosophers and hundreds of families would definitely not be in the Ascension realm. And once they are in the Ascendant realm, the road to He Dao afterwards is very clear, and there is no need for any other attempts. Wu Shuangjiang suddenly asked, Have you had contact with that Wei Shi? Qin Pingon shook his head and said, I only heard about it but I haven't seen it. Originally planned to visit Iashao next time and visit this old god. Like Liu's family in Iashao and Jidu Mountain, they are all must go. Suddenly, Qin Ping's expression turned weird. Wu Shuangjiang smiled. Before leaving Howren World, I did fight Wei Shi and I regret it now. I shouldn't make him worse. Wei Shi of Iashao has taken a lot of his own nicknames, among which the more famous is the 37 Peak Master, an extremely prestigious old monk in the Ascension realm. Is just in an awkward situation similar to Suzus Yubei, as if the main road is cut off and he has come to a dead end. Now Wei Shi seems to have completely given up on the matter of entering the 14th realm. Wei Shi was first born in Shanzaixiu, who turned out to be famous, and can be described as the most popular at the moment. When this person was young, among the younger generation of monks in Howren-Jizhou, he was known as invincible in the same realm for 500 years. The Golden Core and Yuanyingdi Fairyland in the middle 5 realms, plus the Jade and Fairy in the upper 5 realms 2 realms, sweeping all the way, invincible in all directions, learning from Taoism, catching and killing each other and never loses. On the mountain or compete or fight, Wei Shi won 96 games in a row. This record was broken by an extremely disgraceful and serious water injection until it was broken by a certain dog. It is rumored that the real fire dragon has suffered a loss in Wei Shi's hands. Also, the old sword fairy Zhou Xian among the 10 Middle-earth people has also lost Wei Shi. It was only after Wei Shi entered the Ascension realm, but instead he stagnated and was constantly surpassed by the defeated men of the year. It may be that the greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. Not only the hometown of Iashao but even Zhongtu Shenzhou regrets it. I don't understand why Wei Shi, who has a great road, is so not guaranteed in the late festival. It is reasonable to say that Wei Amnesty is the one who has the most hope to become the newest monk of the 14th realm. So in the last 1,000 years, Wei Shi was often ridiculed by the Huolong real person. The ancients are sincere not to deceive me. As for the 97th match where Wei Shi lost to is a mystery. Wu Shuangjiang gave a shocking inside story. Wei Shi didn't have enough stamina to practice as the rumors in the outside world, nor did he never find a certain path that fits the avenue. But after only 100 years after he entered the Ascendant Realm, he tried after a retreat but the success fell short. For this reason Mr. Sanshan Jiuho made a special trip to Iashao, which is tantamount to taking the initiative to help Wei Shi, who had high hopes, sideways gave way to half a road and a door. Unfortunately Wei Shi himself failed. Seizing the opportunity, he was still too anxious. He wanted too much for the 14th realm that seemed to be within reach. In the end, the bamboo basket was completely empty. The great cultivator at the peak of the Ascension realm, who has reached a perfect state, more or less, will fail once or twice, and will be forced to change the path under his feet. He has a good foundation and can make mistakes twice, but if he makes a mistake, everything will stop if he makes a mistake. Pardon is the latter. Qin Pingon asked, Huolong. Wu Shuangjiang said, I have missed it twice, once because he failed to improve the lay fa. And the other was the combination of water and fire, but still failed to unite, so it is difficult to enter the 14th stage. It is very difficult. The Fey concubine in the wild world was dragged down the river by Qin Pingon and took away nearly 40% of the water transport. The old ancestor Zhu Wei, who moved to the mountain, negotiated the ownership of the Tuyue mountain in private with the savage co-owner, but the result was also in vain. About the latter, it is Wu Shuangjiang's conclusion after finding Jing Juzhong in the wild world. I am absolutely willing to do this business with a sword to cultivate a brilliant temperament, and exchange a Tuyue mountain for a savage world in exchange for a brand new 14-level cultivator. Speaking of this, Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, These 2 accounts, you have to forget it. It is enough to provoke hatred for cutting people and money, not to mention that you have directly blocked their opportunity for harmony. It is indeed not shared. If one day they are lucky enough to be among the 14 realms, one word of advice, don't go to the barren world lightly. What's more, there is that barbarous co-lord's brilliant and close disciple Zhou Qingao, all of whom are your old friends. I believe I will treat you with hospitality, the last hermit of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Qin Pingon asked curiously, that hard-working martial arts master really has such a good cultivating aptitude? Wu Shuangjiang nodded and said, It will only be better than you think. Wei Shi will be inferior to this person, so as long as he is willing to go to practice, he can definitely become the 14th realm. Qin Pingon, guess what, this is a hard work, sitting alone on the peak of Leap Moon all year round, what do you want to do? Qin Pingon thought for a while and tentatively said, see if the world can throw a punch and smash the moon in the sky? Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, it's still pure martial arts, better to understand pure martial arts. Worry not only for the monks in our continent but also for the Wufu Bai-O who has become a climate. He has been in a foreign land and cherishes the mountains and rivers in his years. Fortunately there is a Xuandu temple that can rest. Sun Huizhong always mentions a certain Qin Shaodao friend, he is still very close. Haoran has this treatment in the world after Bai Yi, it seems that you are the only one. Qin Pingon said helplessly, thank you Dao Chang's son for your love. Wu Shuangjiang suddenly asked Xiaomo, among you cultivators who have been awakened by Bai Zai, you don't know how strange a fellow Daoist can kill you. Xiaomo is frank, desperate power, defense, escape. Xiaomo is not the top-notch but each ranking is still relatively high, so I really want to fight with anyone against anyone enough. You can protect yourself. Anything other than 2 or 3 can be killed as long as there is no one to stop him. Wu Shuangjiang suddenly understood. Xiaomo was the one who brewed wine with Bixiadong master and asked Yuanxiang for the sword? Xiaomo smiled. The past is not worth mentioning. Jing Dafeng hurriedly raised the wine bowl. Xiaomo is up to me, no wonder I fell in love. Is all the same people, the hero does not mention the bravery in the past and the old nasty is not enough to praise. Xiaomo faced Jing Dafeng holding his bowl with both hands and drank it. Qin Pingon asked, is there any extra gold and copper coins for Sui Chu Gong? Wu Shuangjiang nodded and said, there are some. Qin Pingon curiously asked, I don't know what the sum of Palace Master Wu is? Wu Shuangjiang said, it's meaningless if it's more or less. It won't be given to you anyway. What's more, far away can't quench your near thirst. If you want to create a prototype of a long river of time with your flying sword in the cage, you'll have to look for it. The palace asks for gold, fine and bronze coins? Why, do you want me to knock my head away from the colorful world? Qin Pingon still doesn't give up. Can't you just have a discussion? As for how Wu Shuangjiang is so knowledgeable, in the summer palace chatting with Kui Hu and Chuanfu and recounting the past with Qisho, Wu Shuangjiang seems to be very clear, don't guess anyway. And that long river of time, even if it is really built by itself, is not static. In the future it will still need a steady stream of living water to increase the water level and even widen the riverbed. To put it simply, in the future the wellhead moon can evolve into tens of thousands of flying swords, and the bird in the cage can create a bottomless river of time. The several magical powers of the 2 natal flying swords can complement each other. Qin Pingon to become an ascending realm swordsman again, then in the Qingming world when facing Wuzhou or Bailu, you can turn around and run away without saying a word, at least the cost of fighting power. Wu Shuangjiang said straightforwardly, since everything is easy to discuss, then this matter is avoided. Qin Pingon asked, is there a big use for exchanging the palace? Wu Shuangjiang shook his head and gave a very perfunctory answer, it's almost the same as that piece of dragon slashing cliff, it's not really useful, just keep good looking, easy to sell things that are not easy to buy, who would think it's too much? Qin Pingon is a little tired. So you can't be Cui Yong in your life. If he had been doing business with the Confucian temple, where is the most golden body fragments in the world? Naturally, it is a barren world. Together, the gods of the mountains and rivers without long feet can run. Where to go but to treat the human body according to the human way? What kind of psychological burden does it have? If you don't agree to Song He's appointment as the new Grand Master, Qin Pingon is a bit self-aware. Jing Dafeng was overwhelmed with joy. Wu Shuangjiang disapproved and said, this is the case in the world. What about the world? So restrained, how can we talk about pure sword repair on its own way? Jing Dafeng began to fan the flames. Qin Pingon has something that Qin Ping can't do, Cui Huang or Wu Shuangjiang, and Wu Shuangjiang is different, but Wu Shuangjiang can't do Qin Pingon. Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, I only said that Qin Pingon could not be an embroidered tiger, and I didn't say that I could be an embroidered tiger or a hidden official. The two things do not conflict. Mr. Jing doesn't need to deny the truth with the truth. Jing Dafeng quickly drank alcohol and was shocked, pricked his hands, shook his head at Cui Dongshan and signaled you to come. Cui Dongshan was sick and said, I've beaten it but I can't. Qin Pingon asked, is Palace Master Wu preparing to leave Feishing City? Wu Shuangjiang nodded. Looking back over there are a few young people with decent qualifications who need me to personally guide the practice. Moreover, he promised Sun Huizhong that she would be the young woman crowned by Xian Duguan. She is Xian Duguan. As the pillar of her future, I have to protect her. 1 or 2 here is agreed. But Qin Pingon took a sip of boring wine. As one of the Daoist forces in the Qingming world, 3,000 Taoists including Sui Chu Gong monks rushed to the colorful world together. Sui Chu Gong was on the east side and a circle of landscape and land was drawn, which happened to be built in the colorful world with Xiandu Temple. The hilltops of the Vassal are located in the north and south of the Baiyujing forces. It's not like, but it's obvious that our 2 families are deliberately disgusting you Baiyujing. Absolutely not. Let Baiyujing go the old way, and then be as dominant as the Qingming world. The monk who dared to break his wrist with Baiyujing so directly. In the entire Qingming world, it is indeed only Wu Shuangjiang and Sun Daochang. The year-old monk who is not afraid of death is notoriously not afraid of death. The Taoist sword Immortal line of Xian Duguan is recognized as a fond of fighting, or to be precise like fighting. Wu Shuangjiang stood up and planned to leave. Qin Pingon stood up, clasped his fists and said, I wish Mr. Zheng a smooth journey. Selling is not righteous. Wu Shuangjiang looked at this young hidden official who seemed to have been deflated. Hai Yener is bad now. He must have already figured out how to get close to Nawai's pardon. This is Qin Pingan's advantage of being extremely invisible to mountains and dew. There are bridges to cross bridges, roads along the road, no roads under your feet and rivers crossing the ridge. But this is not the reason why Wu Shuangjiang chose to show up today instead of leaving quietly. A sword soars and goes to the awe-inspiring world. One who does not hesitate to exchange merits with the Confucian temple, rushes to the colorful world. Such a fairy family couple, it will indeed make the onlookers take a look and they will all feel beautiful. A pair made in heaven, lovers will eventually become family members. Wu Shuangjiang is in a good mood. He changed his mind, took out a grain of silver, placed it gently on the table and asked, What is this? Money. Qin Pingon replied without hesitation, Tsailu. In addition to words, this thing is the most circulating thing in the world. Wu Shuangjiang asked, Tongyer and Fuyao, hundreds of countries large and small, how were taxes paid in the early years and how much was the total? Have the books of the Confucian temple Gongdalan turned over? Qin Pingon nodded. I copied a copy. Wu Shuangjiang nodded. A wise man will be able to see through, and it is worthwhile to tell the secrets and truths of today and say, rather than running around and toiling around picking and choosing and exhausting the incense, go to ask someone to nod and promise to sell you gold and copper. It's better to find 1 or 2 joints and the problem will naturally be solved. Whether you do business with Baozhai or negotiate business with AI Aizhou Lu Jubao, your expenses and the price you pay are destined to not be small. 3 kinds of fairy money on the mountain: snow, summer and rain, gold, silver and bronze under the mountain, plus the ticket numbers of the major silver houses. The bustling is all for profit in the final analysis, it is a word of money. Lu Kaishan of AI Aizhou, Mr. Fan the merchant, is the 2 richest people in the world. Soldiers and horses did not move the grain and grass first, and the drums of war sounded gold 10,000 taels. Why doesn't Mr. Fan compete with Lu Jubao for the title of the richest man? Because Mr. Fan doesn't care at all. Lu Jubao just makes money. Mr. Fan's avenue is broader than Lu Jubao. The world's people earn money and spend money anyway. They are the merchant's avenue, which is the best in the world compared to earning money. Lu Kaishan, which is higher and lower. Replaced by you. What a false name for the accountant. That's why the person you really are looking for is the ancestor of the merchant, because he has the same interests as you in something: Southeast Tongye, South Paseo Island, Southwest Fuyao Island, Sanzhou Mountains, rivers and mountains. At the foot of the mountain, we must pursue a stable order so that we can extend our wealth in all directions. If Sanzhou's wealth is better than the past, I am Mr. Fan, and I am willing to take the initiative to offer gold, fine and bronze coins with both hands, even if it is the same as before the war. Mr. Wei Fan, after all, it is necessary to get into the 14th realm with this one move. Do you think this deal, when both parties are seated, are you begging him or he begging you? Even if you don't say who is begging, the 2 sides sit on an equal footing. Qin Pingon raised his bowl and took a sip of wine. Wu Shuangjiang glanced at the white-clothed boy as if asking something. Why not remind your husband? Cui Dongshan feels helpless. He is like setting up countless large and small gates for himself. And the most cruel thing is that he can skip certain keywords on the context, so now my brain is really not enough. Wu Shuangjiang laughed and exclaimed from the bottom of his heart, Embroidering tigers are amazing. Deliberately embarrassing Cui Dongshan. This is the most wise move so that both the husband and the student cannot go the old way and prove their own ways. Wu Shuangjiang remembered something. Xing Juzhong asked me to give you a word. One of the 3 officials of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, he may have been to the Lizhu cave. As for whether this person has left the town, it is hard to say. Served as a bull. Ning Yao ran away from home and traveled alone. The reason why he chose Lizhu Dongtian as the endpoint is not unreasonable. Wan Qiong, a man of iron and sword, has not enough reason. Even if Qin Pingon had no intention of asking, Xing Dafeng still took the initiative and said helplessly, I really don't know this, master has never said it. In fact, in his early years Old Man Yang was on the side of the apprentice Xing Dafeng, occasionally speaking for the first time, and a sentence would never exceed 10 words. Wu Shuangjiang finally laughed and said, You don't have to run into a 14th level monk, just feel scared. After all, not all 14th level monks are like me. Some people are really lucky. I really want to say, the minds and methods outside the realm can't actually be on the table. It's just that God rewards a bowl of rice and eats. If you are full and have a little strength, you will feel invincible in the world. Wait until the ancestor of Sanjiao Sandao. Some of the 14 realms where the mind is not cultivated enough, have tasted the sweetness first and will soon suffer a lot. The big white goose was lying on the table that was annoyed and he was pretending to be an expert again. But seeing that this guy is deliberately trying to get rid of that Daoist cock, I have no choice but to admit it. On the night ship, in fact, even if Cui Dongshan and Jiang Shangzhen knew Wu Shuangjiang's method of harmony, it could be described as ingenious. But the two whispered in private, still don't think Wu Shuangjiang can really fight Yu Dou in the life and death battle. Until today Cui Dongshan knows more truth. Maybe there is a drama. Wu Shuangjiang saw that there was a little wine left in the bowl, so he picked up the bowl and held it up high as if it were a silent toast, and then stood and finished drinking. Cui Dongshan straightened up and drank in one sip. Xing Dafeng and Xiaomo were similar. Xing Dafeng smiled before drinking. Old friends and new friends, good drinks and a good meeting. Xiaomo didn't say anything. On a small account book there was an extra Daoist ant named Wuzhou. I really need to practice swords well. It has been more than 10,000 years and I can't always be blocked by a threshold like this. Cui Dongshan took a deep breath. I really want to practice hard. First, Xing Zhongzhong was so angry that he could hold back his internal injuries. Today Wu Shuang was again dressed as a master of Taoism all the way. Cui Dongshan poured himself a bowl of wine, also held it high and got bored again. Wish the wine to the east, listen to the sword aura like a dragon Ming wild, and watch the sword shine like a flower to spread the world and be calm. Qin Pingon picked up an unopened jar of dumb lake wine on the table and handed it to Wu Shuangjiang. Wu Shuangjiang actually did not refuse and accepted it with a smile. I helped you with a message and you will also say hello to me and Xiaoman when you turn around. Because I really want to have such a girl, silly but cute and loving. The little girl would blink her eyes and tilt her head, as if she was saying that my cerebellum was broad and clever. Who would not like it? Xing Dafeng laughed loudly, and the cards of the right guard of the Luopa mountain are big. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded, no problem. Wu Shuangjiang took the hip flask and walked out 2 steps, turned around and smiled with Qin Pingon and the others. It's the matter here, goodbye in the rivers and lakes. Sword of Coming Chapter 9:17. After Lu Chen left Beiju Luzhou Qingliangzong, he did not return to Bai Yujing directly. Instead he took a trip to Qinghao country. In that Dongxian street he met the scholar Chen who was supposed to be Li. Returning to Aquarius Island sneakily, to meet an old friend who is far from his own realm but cannot underestimate his identity. After crossing the sea from Beiju Luzhou all the way to the south, and looting over the land of Aquarius Island, it is not surprising that the sage of the Confucian temple who sits in the sky is also an old acquaintance. He talked a few words with Lu Chen. Lu Chen felt that the retelling of the old with less affectionate words could be regarded as a happy conversation. As for what the other party thinks, Lu Chen can't control it. Hangzhou Yuzhong County, a new logging institute was established. The first chief officer of the logging institute was a Beijinger named Lin Jingqing. I heard that he had previously served in the Yamen of the Ministry of War of the capital, serving as the second in command of the post office. This Master Lin did not have any new officials to take office, nor did he do everything. No matter, it was just enjoying blessings. things were generally considered to be quite satisfactory, and the procedures that should be followed were all gone through. For example, put on official robes, bring the subordinate staff of the government office, and go to the local Wenwu Temple and Qinghuang Temple to offer incense. Because the logging yard is a new government office, there is nothing to hand over with the predecessor's official duties, which saves a lot of trouble. In the night, a young Daoist priest wearing a lotus crown didn't knock on the door, but pushed the door straight in. He sat on the bench next to the brazier, stretched out his hand to warm himself, shuddered and asked with a smile, "Ning Yao's assassin still hasn't been able to find out the main envoy behind the scenes?" Lin Jingqing put down the books in his hand, raised his eyelids, sat still and turned a deaf ear to the question of the third master by Yujing. Lin Jingqing just clasped his fists and said kindly, "I have seen Master Lu." Lu shook his sleeves. "Which one of us is with whom is hypocritical?" Having a fortune-telling booth in the small town for more than 10 years, both sides know everything well. Just like Chao Gingxin of the Kiln Affairs Supervision and Administration Bureau, the young mountain owner of the Luopa Mountain who needed to stare most, but the two sides never met to chat. On Lu Chen's side so did Lin Jingqing. Lin Jingqing is a native of the Lizhu Cave, and even the second monk personally selected by Embroidery Tiger. Otherwise, the dignified master of the country will not be so boring to help the son of an official of the Supervision and Administration Department to help name it. As for the last person who was appointed to the post as soon as Jiazi's deadline expires, even if he resigns without success, Embroidery Tiger Cui Huang is naturally not satisfied. Before this person there is actually a foreign sword fairy who has served as the longest time as a Lizhu Cave heavenly goddess, and the other party also has a very special hidden identity, a priest. This was the last time I met with Cui Guosher and revealed the secret to Lin Jingqing. This sword repairman who quietly left his hometown and came to the world through the upside-down mountain, was the last priest in the history of the Great Wall of Jianqi. In fact, when the old man Yang visited the Lizhu Cave for the first time in Ningyao, he leaked the secret for her, but the old man said at the time that the clouds covered the mist, and only said that there was a sword repairer from a foreign country who died near the small town. Before that, the sword repairman had collected all the landscapes and experiences and compiled them into a book, and finally left a book of landscape travels which he would occasionally read. At that time Ningyao was just skeptical. He didn't think deeply at the time. After that, old man Yang changed the subject and asked her one last question, "What is the voice of her heart?" The young girl has an enlightenment in an instant, and in an instant she enters a mysterious state similar to Buddhism meditation and Taoist heart fast. Lin Jingqing guessed that the sword repairman, one of the 3 officials of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, was rushing to the old sword strip under the stone arch bridge, but for some reason he could not get a certain answer, so he probably stayed in the Lizhu Cave. Going to serve as a gangster, it's just that it was still too early before Cui Yun became the teacher of Dei, and the Song clan of Dei was always kept in the dark, and he did not know how deeply involved with the Great Wall of Jianqi. But this priest, besides the sword repair on the face, has a more concealed identity. He is a master of martial arts who is already on the top of the mountain and has nowhere to go. In the history of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, there are only a handful of martial arts in the end. The last one is by Lianshuang and she is still a woman. This is absolutely unreasonable. The martial arts of the Great Wall of Sword Qi are again suppressed by the fate of Kendo, and the number of pure martial arts in the 9 realms and 10 realms should not be so scarce. Independence. Because someone monopolized the martial arts. Haoran, the first person in martial arts in the world, Longbow, Zhang Tiaoxia. This person did not lose heart in the past years. At the peak of boxing, Zhang Tiaoxia at that moment can be described as a spirited spirit, and the of war will be above the limit. It is completely regarded as something in the bag and there is a great spirit of giving up to others. It turned out to be above the sea and once had a questioning punch with an unknown pure martial artist. Zhang Tiaoxia did not lose and did not win. But after that, Zhang Tiaoxia turned to practice and eventually became the longest-lived martial artist in Haoran's history. Zhang Tiaoxia never recognized the many reputations and titles given to him by the outside world, such as the #1 martial artist in the world. The reason why Lu Chen knew about this was due to his anonymous disciple, Lao Zhouzi Xianxia. Xianxia happened to be the only bystander of Wen Quan. In that battle at the pinnacle of martial arts, the figures of both sides were as fast as thunder, and the speed was as fast as the sword-repairing flying swords. The sea collapsed everywhere within a radius of thousands of miles, and the bottom was everywhere. Lu Chen even guessed that the priest had a place on a certain mountain. It's a pity that Lu Chen is a cultivator on that weird mountain and he can't go. The world has not moved, the treasure bottle is moving, the world is in chaos, the treasure bottle is still. As if he had guessed what Lin Jingqing was thinking, Lu Chen lowered his head and stared at the flames, rubbed his hands gently and smiled. This idiom is also a saying that the poor Dao walked in the long river of time in the small town back then. Only then did he find it. A little bit of clues was finally calculated based on this clue. From this, it can be seen that this priest is very accurate in fortune-telling. Lin Jingqing saw that Lu Chen actually took out a few sweet potatoes from his sleeve and put them in the brazier. Seeing that he did not plan to leave for a while, he had to ask, "I don't know if Master Lu is visiting tonight, what can I advise?" Lu Chen raised his head and smiled and asked, "Do you know what things you've been superfluous and what are you doing to take advantage of the trend?" Lin Jingqing said indifferently, "Since it's all past, it's better not to know." Lu Chen raised a hand, the brilliance overflowed, the strands of light gathered together, and the stars were the outline of an old Lizhu cave. Those starlights were some bright and dazzling, some were dull and unclear, some were mild and some were extremely dazzling. Moreover, there are differences in light intensity, size and color. When Lu Chen slowly twisted his wrist, it was like a world that hadn't moved before. With a oneness, he began to slowly spin. Lu Chen raised his other hand, twisting his in the shape of a chess piece, as if twisting two spots of light with very different brightness. He was probably worried that Lin Jingqing would not be able to see it. Lu Chen's fingertips showed the appearance of two people. They were fish baskets attached to their waists. There is also a thin and dark strawshoe boy, Chen Pingon. Lu Chen twisted out two more rays of light. It was the great Sui Prince Zhou Xian and an elderly follower, with together and gently pushing the two of them as if they were walking backwards, going further and further away from that Li-Er and Chen Pingon. Lu Chen then gently put the light back and suddenly one speeds up the rotation. The world runs like a person, speeds up the pace, reluctant to give up day and night. The dark spot of light that symbolizes Chen Pingon gradually brightens and finally in an instant Big put the light on and then it seemed to hit something as if a hammer hit the embryo of the sword. Sparks sputtered. Was a short-lived end. After the vision was over, the light returned to darkness, gradually dissipated, and went to others in the small town. "Look, I was scolded by old man Yang. Li-Er asked for it. This is called good intentions to do bad things. You are actually the same, don't you believe it? The poor Dao has to give an example. The serpentine stones that you deliberately thrown into the Dragon Beard River that night are not considered low grade. You should have left it to your son Lin Shi. Family background, right? The result seemed to be a great help. It was able to help the boy in Mud Bottle Alley and increase his harvest by 70% to 80%. Do you know that, in fact, the serpentine stone that Ma Kushuan was able to get arbitrarily was supposed to be Chen Ping and put it in the basket? Lin Jingqing, you do the calculations for this account. Did Chen Ping make a profit or lose it? Anyway, you have to look at it, it must be a big loss. Lin Jingqing remained unmoved and said, I don't care about these twists and turns. Does Chen Pingon now give you the most headache? Lu Chen didn't deny the matter, nodded but quickly asked with a smile. Then if Pang Dao talks a lot, Lin Shi lost a certain opportunity because of your father's partiality? For example, Pang Dao gave Xia the spiritual thing should have fallen into the hands of Lin Shou. Lin Shi lost even more blessings invisibly? There will be a series of things and naturally there will be a series of nothing. The gains and losses here must not be ignored. Back then, poor Dao set up a stall and gave people a fortune-telling. It was a hint to you. Lin Zhengcheng's state of mind is always unwavering and he chuckles. Is there any prospects for my own cub? How big or small you will be in charge? Your surname is Lin? It seems that there is no one named Lin Chen on our family tree. Lu Chen choked for a while, letting the little world hang in the air, rotating on its own, reaching out to touch the sweet potato in the charcoal fire and sighed, I'm so annoying. It's no wonder that Cui Yang would choose this person to be the deity. The realm is really not high but he is a rock-solid man. Moreover, the simple folk customs of the small town, what is going on in the end, one by one talks to people's hearts. Lin Jingqing stood up, walked around the desk and sat by the brazier. He picked up a piece of sweet potato of baked potatoes, patted the dust and started to chew. Lu Xian smiled and reminded, eat slowly and be careful of being hot. Lin Jingqing glanced at the small world that was suspended in the air. Is a little bit bright, almost immobile. For example, there are Aunt Feng in the highest restaurant in the small town, Lu Wei, a monk from the Yin family, and an old coachman from the old Tianting Lei department. There are some light spots bright like stars hanging high. It is Ruan Xiao and Li Lu. There is also Su Han, a sissy kiln worker who is similar to the reincarnation of the rain god. And the girl Zhike who escaped from the Iron Lock well. At the same time, everyone in the small town has continuous threads of cause and effect, or they are linked together or quietly broken. In the end, everyone was wrapped together. There were few monks, but the thread was thick, and there were more long threads on the ordinary masters, but they were slender. Only the Yang family medicine shop was covered by a cloud of mist. Lu Chen gnawed the sweet potato in his hand and suddenly exclaimed, Qin Pingon is too vengeful and I haven't done anything. I'm the only one who has a lot of grievances against me. You are an elder. You have to take care of him, take care of him. Now that you talk on Qin Pingan's side, it's better than anyone else. Lin Jingqing reminded, it seems that there is nothing really done. Books. Lu Xian said to himself. Furthermore, when the small town catastrophe came, it was not only our Baiyujing Immortal who showed up, the three religions, the saints of the family, but all appeared. At most it was the one in our Ziki building who had a bad temper. He took the lead. But it's different. From beginning to end he didn't fight with Qi Jingchun, nor did he say anything cruel and kind. Why didn't Qin Pingon go to seek revenge with the vice master of the Confucian temple, nor to look for Buddhism theory? So he just caught me, and if he had a good temper he would bully, right? I was wronged. Lin Jingqing made a weird move, squeezing out a smiley face and then put it away in an instant. It's like having heard a joke. After the show is over, Zhang Lu will teach you to continue telling the next joke. Lu Chen raised his sleeves and pointed to the sky. Students, we are all scholars. No wonder Lin Shou didn't kiss you when he was young. The saint embraces one as the world style, and knows the glory and humiliation as the world valley. Cui Yang is the son of Lin Jingqing named Shuyi. He even helped Lin Shuyi think about the word when he was crowned. The surname is Lin, the name is Shuyi, and the word is new. It is advisable to be cautious when the sun is changing. Seeing that the third head teacher of Baiyujing was still pretending to be stupid, Lin Jingqing raised his hand and held it with both fingers as if shaking with a book. Lu Xian sighed. Too smart is not good, it is easy to be speechless. What Lin Jingqing meant is probably that you and I are both flippers of the stories in the town. Almost all the clues, context, entanglement, and trends are written clearly in the book, and you and I can also read them clearly. Then don't pretend to be foolish. Lu Xian sighed. If your majesty the emperor can move you, you can speak Qin Pingon, and promise that Dali will be the new national teacher. Lin Jingqing was silent. Being a person and doing things in fact couldn't be simpler. Just want to understand that I am me. Since I am me, I will definitely do a lot of things that should be done and not do many things that should not be done. Just like when Lin Shou went to the school when he was a year old, he went home from get out of class once, his eyes were red and he seemed to cry. Lin Jingqing was good to see at the time and asked him what was going on. Lin Shuyi said that a classmate cheated and he reported it, and then he didn't want anyone to take care of him. Do you think you are wrong? No. Doing the right thing, will there be a good return? Isn't it? Don't everyone say that good people get good rewards? Not certainly. What? Otherwise, what do you want to do when you study? Father, Mr. Qi talked to me and it was about the same meaning, but I think Mr. Qi said it better, saying that I should believe that good people are rewarded, and that is not the same as Dad. Dad, when you go to school, my son was stuck in the alley and beaten like me? Go and read. Oh. By the way, who hit you? Fatty horse in Erlang Lane. Just him. Roll. I really can't blame my son for being afraid of his father. The father and son are not close to each other. Lin Jingqing only needs to see Lin Shuyi when he was a little bit stubborn. For example, he dared to play without finishing his schoolwork. Lin Jingqing went home from the Kiln Affairs Supervision Office and gave it to himself. When he met, he would directly serve this little ancestor with his belt, hitting Lin Shou all the time and often hid under the bed and couldn't get out. The reason why Lin Jingqing disapproved of the school founded by the Qin family in Longweixi was because he felt that those masters were too polite with the educated children, and the sages in the book said too much and played too much. Shao, those rulers and feather dusters are just a display, especially a few old masters who have reached the age, who are self-reliant on the status of a literary magnate, a scholar and a generation of literary sects, and pay attention to a gentleman who speaks but does not use his hands. Later Lin Jingqing couldn't stand it. He made an exception and wrote a secret book and soon transferred a group of young masters to the school. Compared with the old people invited by the Qin family of Long Wuxia, the latter had lower knowledge and less ink, but a bunch of them were expected to win the list. The titled Dali Juzi gave lectures to a group of Mongolian children wearing open pants, of course more than enough, and they are more enthusiastic about teaching. In this way the Qin family in Long Wuxia was also a little relaxed. After all, those old people who wouldn't want to go back to their hometowns to hide in the fields, to have a sweetheart or to give lectures in the local academy so as to train a few new scholars in their hometown? Lu Qin glanced at Lin Jingqing and did not disturb the filial piety of the father and son, who was rare in the last generation. He was silent for a moment. After Lin Jingqing calmed down, he changed the subject. If Xiuhu is still there, or even if it is replaced by Song Jisun as the emperor, Zhou Xian will not succeed in succeeding the emperor of the Sui dynasty. Lizhu Dongtian had the 5 biggest opportunities on the table that year, and the Prince Zhou Xian of the Great Sui dynasty got one of them. Later, as the price of the alliance between the Gao family and the Song family in the Sui dynasty, Zhou Xian once served as a proton and studied at the Linlu Academy in Piyun Mountain for many years. When Zhou Xian returned to the Great Sui dynasty and succeeded as the emperor a few years ago, he actually took over the mess of a broken heart. The Great Sui dynasty was tantamount to surrendering without a fight, actively ceding several vassal states including Huang Tinghua to the Dali Song clan. This is simply a great humiliation for the arrogant De Sui Temple civil and martial arts. Wait until the great achievements of the Song family of one country and one continent were completed. For the court of the Sui dynasty, it was another incalculable damage. Only a little energy remained and it was crushed by the great iron cavalry. In this case the Prince Zhou Xian took the initiative to abandon the golden carp and gave up the path of proving longevity. Not to mention, from the golden core realm all the way to the lower 5 realms, Yang life was greatly damaged and it became the 7th in life. It has been rare for 10 ancient times so that it does not violate the Confucian temple ritual system, and can inherit the rule and become the emperor. Lu Qin smiled and said, "The emperor in 30 years can do a lot of things. What's more, human fate has a definite number but there is no death. Since ancient times there has been no heaven to say because this is the heaven. Anyway, poor Dao is very optimistic about this emperor of the Sui dynasty. Maybe he is the lord of Zti who is well known in history." Clap and stand up. Lu Qin came to the desk. There was a steelyard on the desk. Old objects were placed on the desk. It was probably a meeting gift given by the old man Yang when Lin Jingqing took office. A steelyard. 16 taels is 1 caddy. Of course, it is very knowledgeable and exquisite, because the 16 scale stars signify the Big Dipper, the Southern Dipper, and the 3 stars of Fu, Lu, and Shou. Predecessors urged future generations not to deceive others, or 1 or 2 will be short of luck, 2 or 2 will be lost, and life will be short of 30 or 2. Therefore, people who are in business are the most taboo to be short-lived. This makes people watch the sky. Lu Qin picked up the ancient scale, twisted it with 2 fingers, gently rotated it and sighed softly. It's a pity that it's been repeatedly reminded, but it's silent. Putting down the steelyard, Lu Qin turned around and leaned against the bookcase, rubbing his hands on the table made of large wood in Yuzhong County, and sighed gently, blowing away the ball of light hanging above the brazier, like a sack of fireflies floating away. Lu Qin, looking at the scene, he smiled and said, "The sea is the world of dragons and the sky is the hometown of cranes. Big fish can see even the big nets burst out." Lin Jingqing sneered and said, "Mr. Qi did this and has something to do with you, Lu Qin. The reason why it is not the end of the fish's death and the net breaking is just because someone rips the big net and does not hesitate to wrap himself up." Lu Qin laughed and said, "Fortunately I didn't say that poor Dao is a dung stick. Brother Lin is already merciful." Lin Jingqing sneered, "That's because Mr. Qi was mentioned." Lu Qin didn't care. Our brother Lin just had this temper and he was used to it. If you don't flatter the top and don't deceive the next, you're a kind of person. When you behave as a person, behave and be an official. Zhao Yu admired Song Jisun the most. He felt that whether he was playing chess or studying, he was far from being like a window. Song Jisun looked down on Zhao Yu from the bottom of his heart. The 2 sides failed to truly agree on the road, so Zhao Yu failed to do so. Finishing, in the end Song Mu just became a Dali domain king, not an emperor. Zhao Yu was the same. After riding an ox cart and leaving his hometown, he encountered an embroidered tiger blocking the way. The boy handed over the seal presented by his husband. There is nothing wrong with it, but in this way it is far away. Yao, Zhou of Yao turns into shaking of shaking, and laboring of. On the wall of Mud Bottle Alley, Qin Pingon was a lousy person and he spoke out to save others. Naturally, it was out of good intentions. Dang Na did indeed save Lu Xianying from the feet of Lu's children. But in the dark, it belongs to the upper body of the fire. The fate of the two parties is not complementary to each other or even a kind of conflict, so there are all kinds of ups and downs between the two sides, such as Lu Xianying still almost died in our Xingyang mountain. The world moves in the hands of the great sage. Lu Xianying Xingyang mountain and Qin Pingon on the 5th day of May only waited for the three parties to disperse, but Xingyang mountain remained in place, and the other two friends, each displaced and far away from their hometowns, then came together to ask Jian Xingyang. It's just that there are so many gains and losses here which belong to the blessings and misfortunes. If it weren't for the kind-hearted workmanship of the Sissy kiln, that night in the ancestral house of Ni Ping Lane, the heart was blessed for a moment, and in the end only the box of rouge was buried in the alley outside the door, instead of being visible to Qin Pingon, or even hidden underground in the courtyard. Otherwise, in the long run, it will not be a reward, but it will be kind but harmful. Lao Chai, who opened the wedding shop, had repeatedly told his grandson Hu Feng not to approach Qin Pingon. It was a very wise choice. Lu Shen sighed. Wanfeng dislocation. Zhilon is in charge. There is grass in the field. Wanfeng, who left his position without authorization, and Zhilon, who was born in the wrong place, had to be eradicated because it was easy to breed turbidity. Why talk about the humble and annoying barnyard grass? Zhao Yao, who is now serving as the attendant of the Ministry of Criminal Justice, has the word Yao, the word of the old labor, the ballad of ballads, the distant distance, and the universal, and the luxuriant appearance of the grass and wood strips. Song Jisun, who brings together the dragon spirit, Zhao Yao, who is responsible for the finishing touch, Qin Pingon, who was born on the 5th day of May, Lu Xianying, who was born in ancient times to raise dragons, and Hu Feng from the wedding shop. The mountains and clear waters are beautiful, the vegetation is luxuriant, and the wood is harvested to make fire. With the highest ritual in ancient times, the gods are worshipped. On the day when the sun is the most prosperous in the world, the rivers and rivers of the earth are cooked to cast the sun. Taking fire from the sky, the fire ignited to the sky, the smoke soared like a dragon, and the light of the fire went straight out of the sky, forming a long river of time on its own. This is a new way to the sky without the need to ascend. This is fate. Is almost an established fate. Lu Shen said, so the person who persuaded Qin Ping's father back then did not only reveal the life of the porcelain, but also anticipated the arrival of this day. Smashing the natal porcelain is tantamount to turning off the old road. It may not be really avoided, but it has a ray of life. When we look back, it turns out that it is true. Good intentions do bad things and bad intentions can do good things. There are many strange people and many strange things in this world. Lin Zhengcheng's face was gloomy and said, "It's you?" On the way, Lin Jingqing left Lizhu Dongtian to take up a post in the Capital War Department. The national teacher Cui Yang once waited at a post. After a replay, Cui Yang once commented on the three head teachers of Bai Yujing. Even if there is a world across, even if he is defeated by the great Tao of the world, Lu Qin can't stop Lu Qin from restoring the 14th stage peak cultivation base. Can't stop a whole Bai Yujing from crossing the world, falling from the sky, and landing on the sky above the Lizhu cave of Aquarius Island. Lin Jingqing once asked a question at the time, just to target Mr. Qi alone as for? Cui Yan said with a smile, Lu Qin and Qi Jingchun have no major disputes, but as long as it is for that big teacher, Lu Qin will be there. On the one hand, the head teacher Bai Yujing is the person Lu Qin respects the most. In addition, Lu Qin has a bigger appeal, which is out of selfishness, because back then, Lu Qin felt that a certain mystery could be answered by his senior. It is this Taoist ancestor who can really accomplish something. When Lu Xun is indifferent, no one can beat it. When Lu Qin wanted something, no one could beat him. With Lu Xun, it doesn't mean that Qi Jingchun must have no second choice. But because of the appearance of Lu Qin, Qi Jingchun finally had only two choices. It's like a game of chess. When it comes to the final stage, one side has the upper hand. To win or win, but the number of winning moves that has the upper hand, there are only one or two moves to follow. You win your chess game and I win my chess game. For example, suppose Lu Xianying is carrying a few valuable porcelains in his hand, and he wants to find Qin Pingon in Ni Ping Alley. No matter how you walk through the streets and change routes in the town, there are only two ways to go in the end, passing by the door of Gukan's house or not. Lu Xin's existence is just a spoiler who doesn't deal with Lu Xianyang. He is stuck at the corner of the street in front of Gukan's house. Whoever comes will fight for his life, and it is not a mystery. Even if Lu Xianyang can beat that rogue, but weighing the pros and cons, he can't make it. It's unnecessary because he still has porcelain in his hand to give it to Qin Pingon. Of course he has to detour. Lu Qin laughed dumbly, raised his hand and patted the table, pretending to be angrily. What's the matter? Don't spit, people. When did you arrive in the small town? Just a few years of hard work. What can you do? Lin Jingqing will don't know. This big bowl can also be buckled on the head of the poor. Even if you don't care about your conscience, you have to show some evidence for planting and setting up trouble? Lin Jingqing frowned and said, Is it Zhou Zi? Lu Qin wiped his face, acting really tired, shook his head and said, Since it is the most possible, then it must not be. Zhou Zi always likes to stop when he does things. It is not Zhou Zi's style to enter the game in person like this. The Dao heart is broken directly, but it's good to fall. Lu Qin stretched out his hand and patted the crown on the top of his head, then stretched his arms, raised his palms and shook. There are gods 3 feet above his head. Whether outsiders believe it or not, anyway, poor Dao is very particular. Lu Qin was silent for a moment, pinching his fingers and counting, and then suddenly laughed. Poor Tianwan, originally just hid the cicada slough cave sky in the Liju cave sky, thinking that he could deceive himself, he could cross the sea without knowing the sky. In the end it is shallow. Now this kind of self-deception can really be something that anyone can learn and do? Lao Chai kept his promise and did not covet the golden cicada. It is estimated that even Lao Chai did not expect that he was still being taken by his precious grandson. To have this blessing of obviously close at hand, remote in the sky, it is indescribable. If you say the old saying, well, you can't ask for 1/10 of a foot in your life. If you don't ask for the opposite, it may be possible. But when it comes to spoiling younger generations, no one can treat Li Huai better than old man Yang. Therefore, if you say that stupid people have stupid blessings, you must believe it. Next time poor Dao accepts closed disciples, he must accept someone who is not so smart. Lu Xin looked at the Lin Jingqing. As for the whereabouts of the cicadas, you can tell Qin Pingon about the whereabouts of the cicadas. Lin Jingqing twitched the corners of his mouth, obviously not intending. There were many funeral shops in the small town, but there was only one wedding shop. The shopkeeper was Hu Feng's grandfather. After the old man passed away, his real name, Chai Dao Huang, was used on the tombstone. That's why Lu Qin takes a mouthful of old chai. The old man used to be the top spot of all the engagement shops in the ancient world. That is, the so-called Yulao. In later generations, the old place was there in the past called Matching Mountain. Is in charge of a marriage book and red line as well as all the words of the matchmaker. And his grandson Hu Feng. Gu Yuehu. Hu Feng and the banks of the Jilin River in Tonggishao are both descendants of the celestial craftsmen of the ancient Moon Palace. It's just that Hu Feng's bloodline needs to be more pure, just like the difference between the concubines in the portal of future generations. Lu Qin hurriedly walked back to the brazier and sat down. Lin Jingqing would eat all the sweet potatoes if he didn't go back. He picked up the last piece, patted the dust off and breathed hard. He asked with a smile on his face, Brother Lin, it's a poor way. By Yujing's 3 head teachers who are all walking sideways in the Qingming world, who dare to take a breather with Pin Dao. Now you have no backing and you dare to speak so aggressively with Pin Dao. Why? Lin Jingqing said indifferently, I don't do anything wrong in my life, and I am not afraid of ghosts knocking on the door in the middle of the night. Lu Xin complained, when you meet your fellow countrymen in a foreign country, you should have tears in your eyes. Brother Lin is cursing again. Lin Jingqing asked directly, when will Lu Zhangjiao return to his hometown? Lu Xin complained, this is really hurtful, don't forget we are fellow villagers. Lin Jingqing is extremely insincere. Oh, not to mention Master Lu, someone Lin really forgot about this. Lu Xinqi smiled and said, forget it, if others don't know it, you a bad guy won't know. Poor Dao is tantamount to surrendering your life. He accompanies Qin Pinyin through the barren world, makes meritorious deeds and looks at the world. Lin Jingqing nodded and said, it's because I know this, that's why I'm willing to talk so much nonsense with Master Lu tonight, otherwise I would have issued an eviction order. Lu Qin raised his hands, made a sullen dantian posture and said to himself, don't be angry, don't be angry. Don't commit it, don't commit it. Lin Jingqing hesitated for a while, clasped his fists and said solemnly, "Just talk about this matter. I'm very unsuccessful. I'm convinced I'm a man. Isn't it still cursing?" But Lu Chen smiled brightly. "This kind of heartwarming kind words Brother Lin said earlier, maybe the poor Dao would be willing to guard Lin Shi's nephew. It's only from Yuanying to Yupu, not from the Immortal. It's a trivial matter to rise to the top. If Zhang Jiaolu is willing to change his surname, I can add a name next time I edit the genealogy, and it will be no problem on the first page. Anyway, the ancestral temple's scents are all Jiazuxiang. Brother Lin, if you chat like this you will be boring. Pang Dao is also a temperamental person who is fierce and the 6 relatives don't recognize it. Then I change my last name? Brother Lin, please respect yourself." Seeing that Brother Lin began to pretend to be dumb again, Lu Chen had to take the initiative to speak. "It's just a matter of these few days. The Confucian temple has issued an order to evict guests earlier than Brother Lin. Poor Dao must leave the Howren world by the end of this year. Once the beginning of spring he will be poor. Dao is closed. In the final analysis I still can't bear to go with the poor road. Besides that, the poor road can't think of a second reason." Lin Jingqing said, "I heard that the second head teacher just accepted a disciple." Lu Xian was surprised. "Why doesn't the poor Tao know about this? Hey brother, you, what's going on? Don't say hello to my brother." Rong poor Dao pinch points to count. "Oh, by coincidence the surname is Yang, who is nicknamed Zhou Xian, or we are a fellow of the world who is originally from the Taoist school. The second brother is fine, it is to learn from our master. Accept a foreigner as a disciple? The problem is, how can Yang Ning of Luzhou in Beiju compare with himself? The young man is the second elegant Yao Qing. Fortunately he is not Brother Yes' close disciple, otherwise he must stop him." Lu Xian stood up and shook his sleeves. "When everything is over it seems to be meaningless. Just like when Qin Pingyuan had temporarily borrowed a Dao Fa with himself, he would inevitably feel emotional. The world is small when his realm is high. In fact, this is also the common feeling of all the Ascending Realm and 14th Realm great monks. The state of the world is human, the mountains and rivers are complex, and it looks like a normal appearance, like carved out of a mold." In the Western Buddhist country, Lu Chen did not dare to go anymore. The barren world was temporarily unable to go. In addition to returning to the barren bays, there was actually an existence that lived the same life as the barren world. Name: born in the land of barbarians in the wilderness. Similar to that little girl in Wuxia Xianxia. How old is Jiachun now? For a few years. Of course he is still the same as Howren, the old fisherman who was unwilling to punt for the most holy master and his party back then. As for Qingming Tianxia in Western Buddhism, there are naturally similar existences. At the beginning Lu Chen knew the inside story of this matter, so he came up with the phrase, "Heaven and earth live with me and everything is one with me." The ancestors of the 3 teachings would definitely meet each of the Taoists before going out. Dare to ask Xianxia? The only way is emptiness. The spirit of bathing in the snow, in addition to filthy tiredness, and the emptiness of one's heart is the best way to gather in the bosom. Don't ask outside, ask for more blessings. After thinking about it again, it is wisdom. The sky is healthy, the gentleman strives for self-improvement, the terrain is great, and the gentleman carries things with virtue. Therefore a gentleman is cautious and stays away from ghosts and gods. Lin Jingqing stood up. "I want to see you off." Lu Chen smiled and said, "Compared with the broken porcelain pieces of Lao Sishan, it is even more inconspicuous. It seems to be those sagars." "Those sagars" is like the preacher of those exquisite porcelains, but also the guardian who left silently after protecting the mountains and rivers. In Lu Chen's view, the real sagar between heaven and earth is probably the parents of all children. Lin Jingqing asked suddenly. The Sephora Wood sword Qin Pingyuan took away from the small town was the first time he traveled to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. It seemed to be handed over to the old sword Immortal, but he never returned it to the priest of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Does it matter? Lu Chen curled his lips. Pan Dao was no longer in the town at that time, not to mention that this incident was obviously Qi Jingchun's actions. Let Pin Dao guess how. Lu Xian also asked a question. Now at the entrance of the warehouse of the Kiln Affairs Supervision and Administration Bureau, do you still replace the Spring Festival couplets every year? Lin Jingqing shook his head and said, "It hasn't been changed for many years. It is the meaning of the national teacher." In the past, the Kiln Affairs Supervision and Construction Administration had a heavily guarded warehouse. which was responsible for storing all kinds of imperial porcelains produced by firing, and they would be secretly sent to the capital on a regular basis after they were checked and accepted correctly. In those years when Lu Chen set up a stall, he sneaked there a few times. Is filled with porcelain and it is dazzling and beautiful. But Lu Chen didn't rush too seductively. Every time he got there he took out a small bench to sit on, closed his eyes and listened. Listened to the faint sound of the opening of the ice-cracked porcelain, like a string of wind bells, so it was described by the masters as a kind of stunned wind, ding ding dong dong like the sound of heaven. There is a pair of couplets posted at the door of the warehouse. As usual they are written by the saints who are sitting in town. They are used to bid farewell to the old and welcome the new. Lu Xian remembers the last time he went to the warehouse. A spring festival couplet written last year was hanging outside the door. In the sound of reading, the weather is smooth and everything is surplus. On Taiping Road, Guotai Minan welcomes the Chinese New Year every year. Lu Chen's figure disappeared in a flash, leaving the Hangzhou logging yard, and in a flash he came to the stone arch bridge in the small town of the past. Walking along the water in the night, the young Taoist priest came to the green cliff alone, looking up at the sky. Look at the Milky Way in the countryside and snail horns fight for the road. The old friend should laugh at me, dream in a dream, see the body outside. Sword of Coming Chapter 9:18. Daxuan Duguan. There are streams in the peach forest, the stream is clear and shallow and the bottom is clear. A tall old Taoist leader and a young fat man sat on a small bench, rolled up their trousers and stepped barefoot in the stream. One was drinking, and the other was carrying a large handful of freshly picked lotus seeds in his arms. Fatty Yen asked, "Old son, why did you lend the sword to Bai Yi?" Liang said that we repaired the sword with the long beard. How can you give out such a fairy sword? Now it's fine, I just listen. There are a lot of fairy monarchs on Bai Yujing's side, and you don't respect the old grandson. They described the relationship between you and our Xuandu temple as a dead tree and an old tree. Listen, it is very annoying. At that time, Dong Huafu talking about this with me, I was so angry that I almost went to Bai Yujing with him, thinking about how to find your place for the old grandson. No way, I am too low now. I am afraid that I will not be able to ask the sword, but I will lose it. It's the face of Xian Duguan. The old master, as a master of the sword immortal family of the world, his swordsmanship is as high as Taoism. Otherwise he would not be able to sit firmly on the fifth in the world chair under his ass. Sun Daochang sneered and said, "If you have something to say, just say it. Pang Dao doesn't like roundabout words in this life." Yanzhua cautiously said, "I'm really straightforward. Say it in advance, grandson, you are not allowed to hold grudges." Sun Daochang laughed and said, "Would you like to swear a poisonous oath first?" The Taoist priests of Xuandu Temple, from old to young, from high to low, are never afraid to provoke anyone in the Qingming world, but they are only afraid of being missed by the old master. Seeing that the little fat man still didn't dare to speak, the old man smiled and asked, "Would it be more fragrant to go around a stuffy ass?" Yanzhua actually regretted talking about this with the old master, but had to send the arrow on the string. He simply broke the jar and the bamboo tube poured beans. He also told the old master of Dong Huafu's private words. Bai Yujing. The gods and gods on the side all said that if you didn't lend your sword to Bai Yi, you could indeed be among the 14th realms, but if you were among the 14th realms, you would definitely not be able to fight with their second master Bai Yujing. So I deliberately lent the fairy sword Tai Bai to Bai Yi and stayed in Howren world. In this way he showed his elder's demeanor, won the word of mouth, and made Bai also owe a favor from heaven to help Howren world. The most proud person in the world, the Confucian temple, should also care about this incense, and since you are stagnant in the ascendant realm, naturally you don't have to fight with Dao's second son to death, not to mention that with that truly invincible temper, you, as long as he stays in the ascendant realm, he is not good at bullying people, so he has no choice but to care about you. In this way he won't kill 3 birds with 1 stone. Hearing these external rumors, the old Taoist laughed loudly, but he didn't show a slight irritation on his face. Fatty Yen asked, "Old son, are you pretending to be heroic to hide your anger? Don't tell me whoever of us is with whom, it is our own family and we can leave it alone. If it is true I'm angry, don't hide, don't say it's you. I'm going to be furious after hearing this. I have made an appointment with Dong Huafu, and I will record all the old gods who talk badly in the book. Look back and wait for me to ascend to the realm. If you don't believe me, I'll go to Bai Yujing and ask the sword one by one. If you don't believe me, I can make a poisonous oath." The veteran shook the jug. You can pull it down, just you fatty yen. That courage has grown in business acumen and a fat body, and now you have the status of Xuantuguan. I don't even dare to approach Bai Yujing. This kind of words only fellow Chen Xiaodao said. I believe it. Yanzhua asked tentatively, is that really because I'm afraid of losing to that true invincible? The veteran nodded. It's not that I'm afraid of losing, it's that I'm afraid of death. Once you have entered the 14th realm and you will fight Yu Duwenjian, you will naturally not only decide the victory or defeat, but will definitely decide your life and death. Yanzhua looked shocked. The elder Taoist then laughed and said, I am afraid that I am afraid that I am not afraid of death. It is not that I am afraid that the death will disappear, but I am afraid that the amount of death will not be enough. I am worried that death is not a pity. I have 1,000 years of depression in my heart and I cannot spit it out. If only half a breath, just like a hanged ghost, swaying head is not up to the sky, feet are not stepped on the ground and a little bit upright. A man who is not upright and indifferent will die. But in the beginning the poor did not think so much. I had already stepped on the threshold with one foot in the past, and when I was about to lift the other foot, some people came to visit Xuandu Temple sooner or later, and found the poor way to chat. After that they would go to Hauran. The world relaxes, and according to the agreement, if you go with a sword when you go and when you return with a sword, you will go straight to Bai Yujing. He will never stop me from asking Jian Yudo. Yanzhua asked, Master Lu? The veteran head shook his head and said, it's Lu Xiaosan and Dao's second brother, our respected head teacher Bai Yujing. Yanzhua gave a thumbs up. Lao's son still has a card. The veteran Taoist smiled. What is this? When I founded Xuanduguan, there was Daozu among the guests, but Daozu, his old man, was unwilling to overpower and overshadow my limelight, so he hid his identity, but it stayed until the end of the ceremony, and Daozu had a glass of wine before leaving. Yanzhua wondered, why is there no record in the chronology of our Taoist temple for this kind of thing? The veteran Taoist asked, Tao ancestors participate in the ceremony, do we have to write a special book for our Xuandu temple? Can we still have the current Xuandu temple? Why did Taoist ancestors observe the ceremony? Yanzhua rolled his eyes around. The veteran elder Taoist smiled and said, the great master teaches you to be a guest in Xuandu temple. He didn't throw out the promise at the beginning, but persuaded the poor not to have the common knowledge of his second junior brother. If you really want to fight, it is not a personal grievance. This is the truth of the world. The incense of Xuandu temple must be gone, but the 12th floor of the 5th city of Bai Yujing must be missing a few pieces of land, and once Bai Yujing is broken by the poor road, a few leftovers, there will be incomplete roads just like your Swordchi Great Wall broken in two. It is not difficult to defeat ordinary monks, but in the eyes of such a small group of monks, Bai Yujing actually has nothing, and Bai Yujing itself nearly half of the meaning of existence is to wait for the future to change. It happens to be aimed at this small group of disobedient monks, who have been holding back for thousands of years. Once there is no God's restraint, what to do is conceivable. Knowing, if Dao ancestor is not there one day, there will be lawlessness and rampage. Yanzhua asked, if you didn't lend the sword to Bai Yi back then and you returned to Qingming, you would fight with Dao's second son. Wouldn't Dao's ancestor make a move? Take a step back and say that as the head of Dao's ancestor, you can protect it as well. Bai Yujing, right? Sun Dao laughed angrily. Why did Dao ancestor eat and mix these sesame mung beans? As for our great master teacher who has already completed 3,000 merits, Dao Dharma is second only to Dao ancestor. There is really no water at all. It is very different from the true invincible who is most likely to be the second son of Dao. It's just a big palm. Teaching to the Qingming world is similar to the relationship between Lixing and Hauran. Many things that are easy to involve too much are not suitable for action. It is suitable for static and not to move, and the world moves. Yanzhua listened for a long time and whispered softly, it's good there is an old grandson in Xiandu Temple so we can practice with peace of mind. I don't want to move anymore. After chewing some more aftertaste, Yanzhua asked curiously, the self-proclaimed Master Yu is really invincible? Impossible, right? The old Taoist smiled and said, guess illegal. If the second Taoist is careful and unhappy, he can write a letter to our Taoist temple. The poor Taoist will write a letter immediately and report it in various landscapes. To tell the world that the nickname True Invincible is definitely not self-styled by Master Yu. Who dares not believe it? There is no end of chirping over there, but don't blame the poor Dao for coming to the door to ask the crime in person. Yanzhua smiled and said, Then he said happily, calling him brother. The old Taoist master lifted the green wine gourd, took a sip of Taohua's homemade peach blossom wine, shook it and there was no wine, so he threw the empty wine gourd into the stream and drifted away. There is no way to cultivate in vain. The veteran Taoist said with emotion, that little girl in our family is a match for nothing, really a perfect match. One of the 10 young candidates selected in the past years, one of them is a certain female crown of Xianduguan, but she has gone to Wuxia Xianxia and now she is in the Yupu realm. Yanzhua said sadly, am out of play? The old Taoist joked, don't you have Sister Chunhui? Yanzhua waved his hand, don't talk nonsense like this. Sister Chunhui heard it. She didn't dare to say anything to the old grandson. She would only not deal with me in the future, and she wouldn't cooperate with me to do business anymore. Do you still remember when this autumn was about to fall, there was an old master who sat at the same table with poor Dao and Bai, and had a meal with our famous Zhou Xian? Remember? Why don't you remember? He is tall. If the old gentleman was not wearing a Confucian shirt at the time, I would have thought he was a man of the world. Who? Is it Yao Qing, the first assistant of the Qingshan dynasty? Yao Qing, just his 4 differences. Come to Xianduguan. How can you have the qualifications to let Pin Dao and Bai sit there, and accompany you to eat a vegetarian meal? Pin Dao asked Yao Qing to go to the kitchen room to make a meal of vegetarian food. Almost. Yanzhua looked suspicious. This is a bit boasting and not drafting it. Yao Qing is one of the 10 people in the Qingming world. Although the ranking is not as high as the old sun who can be on the list, who is not as high as the sky. What's more, nowadays, there is an uproar outside saying that Yao Qing will be in the 14th realm immediately after Sui Chu Gong Wu Shuangjiang. As a result, the 3 immortal corpses who were on the verge of disaster took refuge one after another, and one of them was said to have gone to Bai Yujing to seek shelter from Yu Zhangjiao. When this kid Yao Qing was young, he was just an idle bastard, a little land ruffian who likes to gamble. If it wasn't for the poor road to pass by the Wuling and generously donate to him and give him some advice, then he has what he is now. Good luck. Otherwise I don't know how many times I will be reborn now. Who is the old master? Talking to you is hard work, just guess your identity. Yanzhua suddenly woke up, beat his chest and said, old grandson, didn't you say it earlier? Otherwise, I would have kowtowed to the old master. Even if I worshipped the old master 3 times, it would be good to have a good fortune. I will take you all together in the future. Isn't the dumb that pass through the gates handy and effortless? By the way, I have to move back to my house. The table and the stool that the old gentleman sat on, I will enshrine it and spend money to buy it. Anyway, grandson, make a price. Yanzhua suddenly said, is it a lie? A teenager wearing a tiger hat is walking by the stream. The old Taoist head immediately beckoned and smiled. Brother Bai Yi, come and help me prove it. Bai also nodded and said, it is indeed the most holy master. The veteran said with a smile, Fatty Yen, in the future remember not to complain that our Taoist vegetarian dishes are not delicious, but the most sage master has given a true evaluation. Bai also hesitated to speak but stopped. The old Taoist quickly winked and Bai did not say anything. Before coming to Qingming world, Bai used to accompany the old scholar at the top of Mount Sui, and met the holy master. Because I want to come to Xuandu to observe and practice swordsmanship, the old scholar and the most sacred master just mentioned Zhou Xian here. The old scholar said that Zhou Xian, which was rumored to be Taoist temple, was not very tasty. The most sage master came to this and heard that it was really average. Therefore, after the supreme master had eaten vegetarian food in the Taoist temple, he said, a veritable name, which is actually a kind of polite remarks at the door. The veteran said with a smile, have you been to that round of Haotsai Mingyue with Zhou Xian? Bai also nodded. The old Taoist looked full of envy and said, looking at the moon and lying on the pine, is it better to lie on the moon and look at the pine, one looking up at the sky, the other looking down at the ground? The scenery is very different. Bai also said, it's not difficult to watch the subject if you want to go. The old Taoist waved his hand, I can't say that. I'm really invincible right now and just lie there to block the road. I am old and dim-eyed. I stepped over with one foot and accidentally stepped on the door of our second son. It's good to say unintentional. In the meantime, just apologize if you step on the crotch, it would be too shameful. Bai Yi wanted to sit on the rock by the stream and chat a little more with the old Guanzhu, and then continued to walk forward when he heard the words. After Yanzhua finished eating a large bag of lotus seeds, he suddenly lifted his feet from the stream and asked, old son, are you actually all ready? The world's only way is too high to forget feelings, and the way is ruthless and people are affectionate. You are born to be a lover. Sun Daochong did not directly give the answer and smiled. You younger generations don't need to think about the grievances of the older generation. It's useless to think about it anyway, just practice hard and reach the top of your own. The old Taoist stood up and said, when you get older you will think about things behind you. In fact, a certain mellow Confucian in Nan Pasuozhou also said something similar. At that time there was only one audience, and he was a foreign scholar named Lu Xianyang. However, the old Guanju quickly laughed and said, but the poor Tao is talking about the ancestors. I am still young. Every day I think, just work hard to add meals. Before the old Taoist left, he said to the young fat man, think carefully about why there is only sword repair in the world. If you want to understand, you will be able to break through. A wind kite ferry has crossed the sea to the land of Tongyi's Hao. It stopped for a while at the Xianxia ferry crossing of Qinghu Palace on Qingjing Mountain, and then continued south to Xindu Mountain. King Sun Chun hesitated during his sword practice today. He walked out of the house and planned to find Chai Wu to sit for a while. She didn't like the excitement, but fortunately Chai Wu didn't like to talk. Except that he would make a noise while drinking. There will be nothing to look for, just right. As a result, as soon as King Sun Chun turned into a corridor, he found that there was a door standing still outside Chai Wu's house. King Sun Chun understood that Chai Wu was still cultivating and should not be disturbed for the time being. Millet Grains tiptoed towards King Sun Chun and came to the ladder. The right protector raised his hand and pinched and reminded in a low voice, the grass and trees will have to practice for half an hour. Can you wait? King Sun Chun shook his head and said, I'm going to miss it. 2 quarters later, I will continue to return to the house to practice swords. Millet's face was full of admiration and he said sincerely, you two are really horribly diligent in practice. King Sun Chun said, you don't have to secretly help me guard the customs in a while. Millet scratched his face. Was discovered? King Sun Chun rarely felt a little guilty and explained, it's not annoying. After a pause, this little girl who was nicknamed a dead fisheye by Xian, still intends to tell the truth. In fact, it is annoying. Having you open the door outside will delay my practice and feel uneasy. The success is not enough, the failure is more than enough. Xiaomi Li stomped his feet in irritation and immediately apologized. I'm sorry, I promise not to be in the future. King Sun Chun squeezed out a smiling face, thought about it and explained again, I blame me for not being able to speak. To be precise, it is actually not annoying, but he knows that you are guarding outside and that you are kind. I always want to say hello to you, listen to you for a few words, or just tell you not to watch the door, but you don't want to withdraw from your mind halfway. If you come and go, you will delay the sword training. What you said just now, even if you have heard it, don't take it to your heart. What kind of thing? Millet grinned, shook his head vigorously and then patted his stomach. The good man said, if others are willing to say a few words in their hearts, they have to remember them, and if you don't hear them, forget them, because the most beautiful things in the world are actually it's not in the mouth but in the eyes. So when you listen to what's in your ears, it often doesn't sound so good. If you can't remember what the other person is saying, you will be dumb even if you have a good temper. Don't let yourself go to your heart, otherwise no one will want to talk to us in the future. The good man Mountain Lord also made an analogy, saying that those truthful things that don't sound so good are just like dumb lake wine. When you first drink it, it may be difficult to swallow, but when you drink it, you will find that this is what it is. The best wine in the world. There are also those self-consciously sulking just like wine that can change the taste and they can't drink it. Once the wine jar is opened, no one wants to drink. The good guy said that the smell of alcohol is just like a person. Good mood accumulated a lot. It seems that no one can smell it. In fact, everyone knows but can only pretend that it can't smell it, don't know. After a long time, it seems that everyone is taking care of each other, but in fact everyone is wronged, very tiring. King Sun Chun remained silent, just listening to the little girl in black. Xiaomi Li glanced at King Sun Chun and cautiously said, is that annoying again? Then I won't say anything. Sun Chun Wang shook his head. The little girl, who seemed to be paralyzed, suddenly smiled brightly, and she blinked at the millet grain. The millet grains are so inspiring. I immediately understood it, grinned, and then quickly reached out to cover his mouth, knowing that I know all the good words in my eyes are in my eyes. At that time, the Luopa mountain watched Jingyang mountain, and the realm was the most unfathomable, probably the right guardian who only showed people in the cave mansion realm. King Sun Chun said, the hidden officer is very kind to you. Hearing that the well-informed Bai Xian said one thing, Master Hermit seems to be currently compiling a landscape travel note, specifically for Xiaomi Li. It seemed that I had asked a friend to help me before, but I was not satisfied, so the hidden officer just started writing by himself. I didn't know the millet grains, I just laughed and said, "Good people are good to everyone." Elsewhere on the ferry, Bai Xian knocked on the door and came to the house where his good brother was a family 500 years ago. He sneakily took out a booklet and put it on the table, not thick. Bai Shou picked up the booklet and looked at some of the names and gang identities recorded above. They were all people in the world who had never heard of them. He curiously asked, "What is it for?" Bai Xian lowered his voice and said, "One day find an opportunity to beat Pei Qian and then I will ask Pei Qian out and then wait for my hint. The cup is a number and the heroes of all walks of life, the heroes of the quartet, will be ambushed early. While Pei Qian will definitely have 2 fists hard to beat 4 hands. Then let Pei Qian admit a mistake even if it has been exposed, but if Pei Qian doesn't know what is good or bad, then I can't blame me for not cultivating fellowship. It's indispensable to have a full meal of old fist. Bai Shou, would you like to add a name here to join in the feast?" Bai Shou gasped. "Oh, isn't it? If this list is accidentally leaked out and someone knows about it, will it be worth it? Which one can escape? 1 book in hand and 1 pot." The more Bai Shou thinks about it, the more something is wrong. His face is puzzled. "Do you know what level she is?" Bai Xian nodded and said, "You have to know. Knowing that I know that the enemy is not dead in 100 battles, how can I not know the realm of Pei Qian?" Seeing that Bai Shou hesitated, Bai Xian shook his head and put away the booklet. "It's fine, I didn't expect the same name by courage and courage, but the disparity." The white head asked, "Have you read this booklet for Xiaomi?" Bai Xian said in a huff, "You treat me stupid. Who doesn't know that the millet grains and Pei Qian are in the same group? They all come from the legendary Luopa Mountain bamboo house. The threshold is very high. It is said that outside the Luopa Mountain, there is only one named Li Baoping and one named Li Huai. It belongs to the line of Zhulu, and this is the news that Bai Xian has finally found out after several times at the gate of the mountain, knocking sideways with the right guardian." Seeing that the white head seemed to be agitated, Bai Xian persuaded him, "Let's not be around Pei Qian right away. You think, why are the 10 martial arts realms called ending?" Bai Shou mistakenly thought that Qin Pingon and Bai Xian had revealed some secrets and curiously asked, "Why?" Bai Xian was taken aback. His mother, "This guy is really a fool. Forget it. Not being able to accept such an ally will drag him down." The white head is unhappy. "Stop talking half, let's talk about it. If it makes sense, I will write a name on the booklet and the picture will work. Ending, of course, is the realm of Xianxia Wufu. Stop here." Seeing that he was sincere, Bai Xian whispered to explain to the head of Bai, "The aptitude of Pei Qian is relatively good, but the martial arts realm is so high she has to be obediently in the end or just wait. Let's swish and catch up with her? Isn't that reasonable? A gentleman's revenge is not too late for 10 years. If we can't get things done in the short term, let's put up with her again. 10 years is not enough. Then 20 years and 30 years. Relying on my boxing qualifications, not to mention the limit, a mountain state is always at your fingertips. Don't worry, when the time comes, I, the leader, will have no other words. I will definitely take the lead. The first one will ask Pei Qian to ask for boxing. What about you? It's my own family who will be a deputy leader, who will be responsible for chasing and intercepting Pei Qian to prevent Pei Qian from escaping when he sees a bad chance. How about that?" Bai Shou held his forehead speechless and was silent for a long time before he suffocated. "Let me think about it again." Bai Xian sighed, put the booklet in his sleeve, picked up the teapot on the table with one hand, and after holding it with one hand he closed the door with his feet, walked in the corridor, shook his head. On the other side of the room, listening to Uncle Bei's whimsical plan, Miyu struggled to hold back a laugh, gave Lu Jinglong a thumbs up and whispered, "Accepting a good disciple, it's no wonder that I can be regarded as brothers and brothers with our hidden officer." Lu Jinglong smiled and said, "In fact, earlier Bai Shou even assassinated Qin Pingon." Miyu gloated with misfortune. "It turns out that there is such a great feat, no wonder Pei Qian will target him." "Sect Master Lu, can you ask something? I want to ask why my name on the clan genealogy is Qi Jinglong, but why is it often called Lu Jinglong?" Miyu nodded. Lu Jinglong smiled and said, "Before I went to the mountain to practice, my surname was Qi, but within a few years of the Taihui sword sect, our sect Master Han had a friend who said that when I was 100 years old, there would be a big hurdle. For the ordinary master, this is nothing. It is the best language to say that long life is 100 years old, but it is really not a good thing to a cultivator who wants to live for a long time. That expert is just like that. Sect Master Han suggested that if you want Qi Jinglong to survive this disaster, you'd better change your surname, otherwise it will conflict with the two great profanities in the north and the south. In the future, you will suffer disaster if you walk outside the mountain when you get close to the water. In fact, this was at the time. This rhetoric is a strange thing because it is necessary to say north and south, so the three continents east of the vast world except for Beiju Luzhou, there is indeed a Jidu, Aquarius and Tonghishao have no great blasphemy, but that person the expert speaks eloquently, coupled with this kind of mountain language, it has always been better to believe that it is not trustworthy. Sovereign Han found my master and my master found my parents again. They all felt that the change of surname was impossible. Young, but in order to ensure that my cultivation is sound, I changed my surname on the clan genealogy, but no one knows about it outside of Tai Huijian's ancestor Master Hall. Maybe I am worried that I will become a joke. Moreover, my name was quietly erased on the family tree of the ancestral hall. According to the advice of an expert, when Lu Jinglong gains the Tao in the future, I can change it back and add my name in these two places respectively. Wait until I know this. Can no longer be changed. So in the later Taihui Jianzong, Qi Jinglong was similar to my real name and Lu Jinglong was like my nickname. The latter yelled more and I didn't know why, so I yelled along. Later Beipingzu opened. Dusting into the sea, it was really named Chidu. Having said that, Lu Jinglong wrote the words Qi and Lu on the table and smiled. Is it a bit similar? Miyu tutade and said astonished. You still have a lot of doors in the world and you have more to pay attention to. Lu Jinglong said, as for the expert who helped me change my surname, my master and sect Master Han have never said the origins. I have two guesses, either Zhou Zi or the person on credit. Miyu was puzzled. The person on credit? What did you do? Lu Jinglong smiled and said, lend money to someone and come back to collect debts one day. Miyu said, like the kind of loan shark like Yamashita? Lu Jinglong nodded and said, strictly speaking, it cannot be regarded as usury. On the contrary, debt collectors and asking for things will always be less than the capital. This seems to be the business purpose set by the first person on credit. So the outside world says that credit is credited. I have a personal line from a branch of the Mo family. The ordinary monks are eager to buy and sell with them on credit, especially those who are precarious, who only hate those who don't come to find themselves on credit. Qin Pingon has let me break the ground in the future. It's right to be careful no matter how careful you are. It's not that I don't want to pay off debts. It's only natural for me to pay off debts. I'm just worried about the way the other party asks to pay off the debts which I can't accept. Miyu said, with the temper of sect Master Han, since he is willing to take care of this for you, I believe I will definitely not cheat you. Lu Jinglong smiled and nodded. Miyu remembered a sword repairman from Luzhou in the North Ju and asked, the Lu Xia of Luomahi, do you have any contact? Lu Jinglong nodded and said, after leaving the Great Wall of Jianqi, I often meet with Lu Sun. People are good people and can't fault it, but the wine is a bit poor. Miyu joked, I have been in Kaik Mansion for a long time a few years ago. How come I have never seen the little deeds of this young Master Lu in any Xianxia Dibao? Lu Jinglong said, it is because of the family tradition of the Luomahe Lu family, who is pragmatic, kind and doesn't like to show off. Luomahe in Beiju Luzhou is a big mountain, but it is not a sect. Its name is not good, but it is an expert in business. It has the background of the sect for a long time, but it hasn't asked the Confucian temple for a word for a long time. The head status, the Mule Mahelu family, has been doing boat and mountain running business on the mountain for generations. It belongs to the kind of muffled sound and fortune. For example, the Mule Mahe is the largest on the mountain, but the reputation is better than Qiong. Linzong is so much better. Beiju Luzhou is well known for its simple folk customs. Many monks often have the habit of making tens of thousands of miles. It may be just a beautiful scene. When they chat, they blush. If they don't agree, someone reports an address. The two sides went to fight. And Howren's most famous engagement is not one of them. Of course, it was the former Northeast Jaluzu and the Northeastern Island of the Year, the famous intercontinental engagement that moved the world. And that time, the one-continent sword repairs traveled far and wide, and across the sea, the magnificent scene was hailed as sword light like water in the sky by later generations. Because it is a cross-continental long-distance ferry, Many of the low-level Jiluzu Jianxia rides on the Luomahe private ferry. All the expenses along the way are the Luomahe Liu's package, Xinjiao wine, fruits and vegetables. The medicated diet from beginning to end did not allow Jianxiu to spend any snowflakes. Although there was no fight in that fight, Zhu Luzhou abruptly snatched the word north from Aizhou. From then on there were only Beiju Luzhou and Aizhou in the world. And Lu Xie, the grandson of the contemporary patriarch, and one of the few sword repairmen among the Lu family's children, has not shown the slightest arrogance since childhood. When he was in the nascent Soul realm he followed other sword repairs across continents and went south. Going to the Great Wall of Jianqi, Lu Xun killed a lot of monsters there, but compared with the former Lord Han Huizi and Zhongli Huangtong of Taihui Jianzong, and the female sword fairy Li of the Duckweed Sword Lake. Just picking it, Lu Xia, the Yuan Ying realm sword repairman, seemed relatively inconspicuous. In the last battle out of the city in a foreign land, Lu Xia fought side by side with Xie Ji, a sword immortal of Fuyaozhou who was born in Xianxia. The two sword repairmen who are also outsiders from the Great Wall of Sword Qi, died in their lives. The older and the higher level handed out the last sword, both to kill the demon, and to clear the way for the young sword repairer. Probably the only time in his life that Lu Xun was famous was when he had an accident-free sign on the small liquor store. He claimed to be drinking under the moon, and he was full of creativity and poetry, leaving behind the widely circulated phrase in the world, "Half of the sword fairy is my friend. Which lady in the world is not shy? I wash my sword with alcohol and no one will say that I am romantic." But in fact in Luomahe, Lu Xia and his father as well as the grandfather who is the current patriarch of the Lu family, are all well-known local riches and old hats, and they are not in touch with romantic talents. As a result, when the discussion at the Confucian temple was over, the entire Beiju Luzhou knew about Lu Xia's innocent card. In recent years the people who have been to Mulemahe to propose marriages have been in an endless stream. They almost broke the threshold. Everyone in Liu's hometown congratulations from the Lord, saying that you can be considered as a smoke from your ancestor's grave, and you actually gave birth to such a talented man. The old patron didn't know whether to cheat or explain a few words. Anyway, it was quite embarrassing. After Lu Xia returned to Luzhou and Beiju, he took the initiative to find Lu Jinglong twice. They both rushed to stay drunk and did not return. Jianxiu said that he didn't drink it this time before going down the mountain. Come again. Life is inconsistent. If the wine has been around for 3 rounds, but it seems that it hasn't been drunk, it will begin to think about the next wine. Miyu was once curious about why the hidden officer never looked for Luomahe to do business. After all, Lu Xia was the old patron of the wine shop and the grandson of the Lu family. The business of Luopa Mountain has always stopped in the middle of Luzhou in Beiju, and there is no business partner in the north. Later I realized that I didn't want to make it difficult for Lu Xia to be a man. The great sword Immortal Bai Chong had a lot of prestige in the north, and Luomahe was accustomed to the landscape in the north. Lu Jinglong said for no reason. When Bai Shou just went up the mountain he also asked me why there is only sword repair in the world, no sword repair or axe repair. Miyu was stunned, laughed dumbfounded, shook his head, took a sip from the wine bowl. I really never thought about this problem. Lu Jinglong smiled and stretched out his hand. Borrow brother Mi's sword to use. Mi's natal flying sword is named Xia Man Tian. These years he has a sword-raising gourd named Hao Liang attached to his waist. It is the relic of his brother Mi who. It was originally given to the hermit. The hermit did not want it. Instead he gave it to Miyu, and the high-ranking saber with the inscription sweeping was given to Miyu by his elder brother in his early years. Miyu handed the sword to Lu Jinglong. Lu Jinglong held the scabbard and slowly drew the sword out of it. The sword light was as bright as Qiuhong and the room was suddenly bright as day. Lu Jinglong put his fingers together and gently wiped the sword body, then raised his fingers and knocked the sword body. The brilliance was like water lines. In ancient times, magic tricks fell like rain on the world, on the earth, and spiritual beings, regardless of their origins, have their own chances, and those who have attained Taoism have sprung up like bamboo shoots after a rain. Lu Jinglong swept slowly with a sword, and a layer of sword light on the tabletop was condensed, like separating the world from the earth. The next moment, Miyu looked around as if he was in an ancient realm of emptiness. The dazzling stars that originally needed to look up were gradually becoming smaller as mustard seeds, as if you could just stretch out your hand and hold it in your hand. Lei Fa the 5 elements 72 talismans the scholars of 100 schools of knowledge, refine the sun and worship the moon attract the stars, look down on the public energy. Following Lu Jinglong's mouth Xianxia from the opposite side, on the earth, spread out by the sword of light, many magical and magical powers were emitted throughout his life. And the first sword between heaven and earth is itself a manifestation of a great avenue. It is sharp and symmetrical. Lu Jinglong stood up, stretched out a hand, condensed a grain of light from the tip of his finger, and swiped it down gently, and a sword light fell straight down. The sword light broke through the earth and went straight to the endless void. There was no distinction between up and down, left, right, front and back. An earth was completely shattered and thousands of magic powers were completely annihilated. Together with the sun, moon and stars in the sky, they were all given by a huge vortex created by the sword light. Herein there is no more brilliance, it seems to be some kind of road unity. Lu Jinglong said indifferently, "This is one sword to break the 10,000 magic." Miyu stared at the magnificent scene of heaven and earth from birth to death. After a while Miyu said solemnly, "The road is already there, I want to retreat."